Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the February 1st, 2018 School Board meeting. Mrs. Belcher, I'll call this meeting to order at 7:32. Mrs. Belcher, could you call the roll, please?
Peter Bielo.
Here.
Brian Boyle.
Here.
Stephanie Duby. Here. Kim Farah. Here. Donna Green. Dan Guide. Sue Sherman. Here. Gregory Spiro. Kelly Ward.
Here.
Also seated at the board table this evening are the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler, and Student Representative Brian Lavoie. The presence of other district administrators as well as Timberlane Teachers Association officers will be reflected in the meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you. All rise, please. Ms. Lavoie leads in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as is customary, I'll deal with the minutes later on. So, Ms. Lavoie, tell us what's happening in the world of Timberlane.
Of course. So I'll start at the middle school. This weekend, this Saturday at 1 and 7 is the middle school musical. They're doing Lion King Jr. I've seen it. I've seen the rehearsals. I'm helping out up there, so it's definitely going to be great. I definitely highly recommend going to see it. They're working really hard on that. This past week at the middle school also was a geography bee. That's like basically a spelling bee, except it's more geography and like social studies type things. Up at the high school, this weekend right now, actually it's not really at the high school, but it's high school students. We're going to Jazz All-State over at Pinkerton High School. It's basically All-State except jazz. And then next Friday, something that was recently announced and kind of finalized is that one of the members from Recycled Percussion, I don't know if you guys know them, they were on America's Got Talent. They kind of are out of New Hampshire. He's actually coming to Timberlane and doing like a little assembly type thing, which I know a lot of us are excited for. At Sandown North on February 9th, so it's coming up next week, is the Mother-Son Dance. And then that same day, over in the PAC, the Atkinson Academy is having lip sync. Those are really big and those have a lot of fun. And then recently, the Danville fourth graders went down to the State House and had like a little field trip tour type thing down there, which is very awesome. That's all I have, but it's a good list.
Very good list. Thank you very much. We'll go to delegates and individuals. Jennifer Toth.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Toth, the Vice President of the Timberlane Teachers Association. Do I need to move a mic for them to hear me?
I think they can hear.
I think you need one closer to you.
Pardon me?
One of your, yeah.
As a Sandown taxpayer and a Timberlane faculty member, I can appreciate the urgency to prepare a budget that considers the interests of all stakeholders. I appreciate the effort of all the members of the Budget Committee and School Board as they work toward this outcome. However, I would like to reiterate that the proposed budget, as prepared by the Budget Committee, and the currently proposed default budget will not adequately fund the Timberlane District at our current levels. The currently proposed budgets will necessitate reductions in staff, academic programs, athletics, or other areas of the district budget. I am aware that new information continues to become known about the needs in specific areas such as special education and transportation. I hope that tonight's discussion will see additions to the default budget as required by law, thus protecting our district from underfunding in these legally mandated areas, which would lead to the necessity of moving money from other programs to cover these requirements, affecting serious consequences for our schools and students. I speak tonight as a representative of all the members of the collective bargaining agreement. I'm here to tell you that each of us is a critical piece of the Timberlane educational system. We have heard a lot lately about what is legal and not, and who is or is not responsible for the difficulties in this budget season. What is important to us and to the students and parents that we serve is that the budget for our district provides for the personnel and materials that we need to make students successful. We ask you, the school board, to continue your work to develop a thoughtfully considered default budget according to the law that will allow us to meet our needs in the area of special education, contract obligations, transportation requirements, and allow us to keep staff members, both professional and support staff, who are so critical to the success of our Timberlane students. Thank you.
Yep. Caitlin Hilbert.
Good evening. I decided, since I didn't see your typical Eagle Scout, to come try to bring some positivity. I think being on the school board is a huge time commitment, and that you all deserve praise for doing so. And so thank you for all for doing that. And I believe everyone on this school board is voting in the way that they consider is in the best interest of this district. And I don't think anyone up there is trying to harm Timberlane. Tonight's agenda includes the default budget, and there's been a lot of discussions about this, which I'm not sure why, because it's only $300,000 off from the proposed operating budget, and I personally have full faith in our voters to pass the proposed operating budget. Either way, I'm confident that the default budget approved is not only legal, but more than adequate to run the district. On November 30th, the superintendent said he believes he'll likely spend around $71 million next year. He went on to explain that to achieve the desirable 1.8 surplus, he would like the proposed operating budget to come in around $72.8 million. 2 weeks later, the school board approved a default of just over $71 million. I understand they're different and that the superintendent's comments were related to the proposed operating budget, not the default, but there was a consensus that the $71 million bottom line is what's needed, and the default is a bottom line budget. I also think this board deserves a huge thank you for the time and effort put into the default budget this year. The school board only has 11 enumerated duties by regulation, and formulating the default is one of them. This year I've seen more due diligence put into preparation, and I'm not saying that didn't occur in prior years, it just wasn't as visible. However, the fact the board did not approve the business administrator's first draft appears to have caused some confusion that the school board can build a budget like the budget committee. I base this observation off the fact that most, if not all, the questions raised by the public and by the president of the TSSU at the supplemental budget hearing were questions regarding projections, making an investment, and what-ifs. These are questions that would be more proper for the budget committee and the proposed operating budget. So I do appreciate this board's efforts, but I think going forward there needs to be clarification as to what a default budget is and what a proposed operating budget is. Also, on a not as positive note, I'm disheartened by the approach taken by some this budget season. I would love to go out and show support for increases in the proposed operating budget if there are efforts saying this is what we need, what we want, and why. I would love to see people campaigning for those increases and asking people to come out and support them at deliberative to add it, since that is the budget that allows for forecasting and adding in any wants of the district. Unfortunately, it seems all efforts have been expended on negativity, wrongful allegations, and creating a divide in this district. And as I previously expressed, I believe you all deserve a thank you for your time and for representing your town's interest, and I don't believe that you deserve these personal attacks because you have a different political opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think what we're going to do here, on our agenda, I show default budget, transportation, special ed. I think I'm going to go transportation, special ed, so we can get some backup before we start talking about default. So, Tom, could you come up and talk to me?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom Geary, Business Operations Coordinator for SAU 55.
Howard Anderson, consultant, transportation consultant.
And Sandy Hotchkins, Transportation Coordinator for the district.
I do have a PowerPoint to show, running you through a synopsis of where we've been in the process and what we've arrived to.
Okay, if you guys could all make sure you speak up, so we're going to.
Right name is right.
Good.
All right, so as you know, we had our bid opening recently for the home-to-school field trips and other event, parts of our pupil transportation bus bid. So I want to run you through a few items, okay?
Is it on?
Here we are. All right. So the first area of focus we looked at when preparing the RFP was safety and communication on the buses. Okay. So as the first note you see, all 29 buses will be brand new at the start of the contract this July. Okay.
I have a question about that right now. Why does that have to be the case? I didn't understand that
Well,
at all.
let's let him,
Well, I mean, we're just gonna go through it.
I'd suggest let's go through it,
Well,
because
he doesn't explain it. I've already seen this
I don't think I was given an
presentation.
opportunity to explain.
I-
if
Good,
I
so
could-
I'd like to understand
my
that.
suggestion is we go through this, because we're not gonna question every thing. So I think
This is a big thing. Why do we
I
need
agree. So
29 new
let's-
buses?
Donna, I think it makes a lot more sense. Let's give a presentation, and then let's,
As I was about to say, having new buses, they mitigate the risk of equipment failure. Okay? It improves the safety for all the students that we're transporting to and from school, to field trips, and to clubs. It also puts all the vendors that we're going to bid on a level playing field. Okay? So right now, we have a current contract with First Student. If we didn't require new buses, they would have a leg up on the competition. I hope that answers the question. Next, we ask that the contractor that we select have a GPS application for parents and staff in the schools and in the central office to be able to monitor the buses and their locations. Many bus companies offer a GPS app that parents can download on their phone, and they can get an ETA arrival time for when the student is going to be dropped off at home. We feel this improves student, parent and school communication, solves a lot of our issues that we receive phone calls. But the bus is running late, when is it gonna be there? So we hope that this is one more tool to expand parent communication. Most of our schools have specific behavior management programs. We are looking for our contractor to be on board with our student behavior management programs. We talked to Mrs. Michaud about how we would obtain training for the drivers, and while we're providing training for staff, we would also provide training for the bus companies. We look at the bus as an extension of the school day, and this is a very valuable resource to have the contractor on board. In our current buses, they were not equipped with PA systems on the inside, okay? So you can imagine if a bus driver is driving a busload of kids and needs to communicate with the child in the back, you have a person hollering at the students, which sometimes comes across as being mean and rude and curt. Having the PA systems in there allows the driver to spend less time being distracted about making contact with the student in the back of the bus and also on the exterior of the bus, and allows them to speak over the PA system. We've also increased the video surveillance on the buses. So if we do have an incident, we're not depending on the one camera and the one angle we have. We've doubled the surveillance coverage and the quality of the video. The area of focus number 2 was contract performance. So as you see, we've increased the liquidated damages clause, okay? So we right now have a daily penalty if the contractor doesn't perform. We've increased that to per occurrence, okay? So if they're unable to staff a bus in the morning, that's an occurrence. If they're unable to staff one in the afternoon, that's an occurrence. Okay, we want to give more incentive for the bus company to fill the driver's seat in the bus. Two-way radio communication penalty, and I'll point that this is one of the superintendent's goals, was to increase two-way radio and communication between the company and the bus. We have rural areas in our district that don't always receive two-way radio communication. We've tasked the contractor with improving their infrastructure in order to communicate with buses while they're on the road with students in them. We've assessed the liquidated damages penalty of $50 per day when that isn't being implemented. The carrier bus company will also be responsible for owning the routing software, okay? It's their task to make sure that the buses are running in the most efficient manner. So we are having them hold the responsibility of having, hosting the routing software. This will not impact students' ability to go on the website and find what their stop is. That's going to be a requirement of the contractor to provide that interface to the parents. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Anderson, who's worked diligently with us to provide us a very good RFP and a good bid process to run through the procurement process.
Good evening. The bid process, once the RFP was created, we ended up posting that on the school district website. It was picked up by an RFP service, which your large companies, whether it be for a student, STA, Durham, they hire these RFP searches that every day they go out, and they bring it all in from district websites, newspapers, whatever's out there, and they receive it. If you look at it, we were fortunate to get one showing that, in fact, it did pick up on the wire service. As far as the actual bid process and notification, the RFP was mailed electronically in an electronic format directly to 6 vendors. Requested, actually requested to be on the bid list. We ended up with 5 coming for the pre-proposal meeting, with 2 actually submitting bids.
As you can also see, we did post, what was generated from that pre-bid mandatory meeting was a Q&A session. We documented all the questions. We immediately posted them on the website so everybody could see the same answers.
There were actually 2 options. Option A, which was if they were to bid or only awarded the Timber Lane buses. Or B, which is, we'll show you in a minute, if they're awarded Hampstead and Timber Lane. And the reason it makes a difference is that when it comes to awards, the larger the bus, the better price you're going to get, which you'll see when it comes to B. As far as the A goes, option A, the first student was the only bidder.
I'd
As far
like to
as-
understand why that might be.
We're gonna find
Could
out in
we-
a minute. We're gonna find out. That's one of the questions.
Okay.
The contractor resources, as far as for a student, First Student has the largest resources compared to the other companies in New Hampshire. They've got 38 contracts with 692 buses. As far as
Yep. I put this 10-year overview and trend together to kind of give you a picture of the last contract we have and the way it would look if we awarded First Student, which was the only bidder on option A, the contract, okay? So as you can see, over the years, there's been a 3% increase in our lot per year in our last contract. And we see a jump this year of 14% for the first year. And then after that, it tapers back to the 3% per year.
Can I jump back one?
Yeah.
You asked about why would they only bid, okay? First Student currently has the contract, and you'll see the difference in price from the B to the A. With STA or another bidder, they'd have to come in and go through the whole facility, set it up, bring in the buses, and it's gonna be even higher. So it's really not worth it for them to do it unless they got both contracts. That's why you'll see that they didn't bid.
Mr. Chair, Fry, can I speak to that for a second? Or no? Right now, option B, and I just want to update you, Hampstead is not interested. They're probably going to pass on the B bids. They've given me the authority to go out and negotiate with the company to find a bid, Hampstead only. So the B option is not available. I've confirmed that with the chair and the board members this afternoon. So we should be focusing on option A.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
well, first of all.
I disagree.
Anyway, yeah. Go ahead. Let's,
So again, I mean, I'll review the option B as it came in under the RFP. That was,
I want you to finish your presentation, and then we have a bunch of questions.
We have a bunch of
I
questions.
mean, a
Well, that's
bunch of-
fine.
Why are we spending time on option B? We can't even go with option B, so let's forget it. We're wasting our time.
Mrs. Green's correct. I've confirmed that with the Hampstead School Board.
Let's not discuss option B then.
all right.
That's fine.
That brings us to the end because, we're going to discuss option A, and entertain any questions you have.
Well, before I open up the floor, I guess that was my question that I mentioned to the superintendent a couple weeks ago. How come there's only one person interested in doing transportation? We have one bid. Why is
Because
that?
we asked for 29 new buses. That was already asking for just the two biggest
That-
companies to
time out
bid.
there. Can I, I'm asking them a question. Why is?
As far as option A goes, as I just stated, when a company looks at, can I get both bids together or just a single out of the two, they're gonna go with a higher rate, which First Student did, but they're already established. A second company coming in would have to establish themselves with only part of the contract, and it's just not desirable to them. That's why.
So there's only two bus companies around?
Well, no, we actually had 5 come to the pre-proposal, but
Yeah, but only, I'm confused that. There's a
Only-
large contract,
it
you
is.
go out to bid, and only 2 people put in bids.
Well, and you have to understand, too, that there are, the other companies, for instance, Butler, let's say Butler, came to the pre-proposal. They have work in the northern part of New Hampshire, as well as Amherst, Milford. So to set up a new one down here, just for possibly the 29 buses, may not be worth it to them, because they're primarily up north. And they got Coach Company, who is right here, but they've been out of the transportation business for quite a while. Salter Transportation has Sanborn, it's only one contract. And he probably would not want to set up a facility within here, but park the buses in a lot where he does now and drive them down to Mass for maintenance. That's why. It's just,
And drive
not-
them down where, sorry?
he has a location in Massachusetts, right over the line, that he brings them down for maintenance.
So,
So what's the problem, right?
so his issue might have been that he didn't have a terminal in the 5 towns?
Again, they would have had to establish a terminal. It's just not attractive to them unless
Well,
they
why-
got both. In other words,
Why-
I can't answer for why they
Right.
didn't do it.
I understand that, but why in the RFP did it require that the terminal be within the 5 towns?
I would actually refer back, I think in your literature is the Q&A, and that was one of the questions that came up at the pre-bid conference. Would we accept a bid if they were able to establish a shop in a bordering town that was outside of the 5? And we said that we would evaluate that as the proposals came in. So
That-
that, I don't think that did not limit the pool.
Well,
That's it, you're
you said
insinuating.
you'd evaluate it, you did not say you'd accept it. That might have been enough for somebody to not come in on a bid.
You don't think a company that really wants a contract would at least try?
I can't speak for them.
I can base it on my experience, because I did have Timberlane before, and I had all of New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont. When I looked at a contract, I looked at it as, what was the most efficient way, and was it efficient for me to go in for that size and set up if I had nothing close to it? And many times, I might go to the bid and put in a non-bid because it just didn't make any sense fiscally, financially, or business-wise. It just didn't make sense. And you'll find that throughout. Not only that, but they take into consideration, is there a driver issue? If there is, do I have the resources? Can I pull them down from Barnstead, Amherst, Milford, where I'm already hurting? So that plays a large part. And right now in the United States, driver's problem is a huge issue, especially in New Hampshire. 2.5% unemployment, there's just nothing to pick from. So they base it on business. Is it justified for them to do it? And that's what it's based on. It has nothing to do with whether bid spec's okay. I can tell you right now that we actually got a kudos from one of the contractors during the pre-proposal, that the RFP was put together very well.
Would that have been first?
Okay.
No, it actually wasn't First Student.
It wasn't.
Okay.
That's good to
It
know.
was SDA.
No, actually, it
Whatever.
wasn't with Salter Transportation.
Again.
Salter Transportation.
Mrs. Green, you had a question?
Well, here we have a situation where we put a contract out to bid, and once again, we get one bid. This is a recurring pattern in our district, and it's an insult to us. We hired a consultant so we could get the optimization of our RFP and our bids, and we still get one bid. What is this? This is absolutely unacceptable. And I think the root of it is that we're asking for 29 new buses.
Can I answer that?
Yeah,
real quick?
please.
Okay. If we didn't put that we required 29 new buses, first student would be able to operate with their current fleet and only have to buy, I'm not sure off the top of my head the amount, but it's a very small quantity that they actually have to procure to maintain the no older than 5-year rule that we have in the contract. So if anything, I believe requiring 29 new buses, okay, which we took safety into mind, okay, we want our kids riding in the safest vehicle possible. 29 new buses levels the playing field for anybody else that was interested in bidding, because everybody has to go out and spend the same amount on new buses.
If I could-
Okay, but now
not-
we're down to
if-
one bid, okay? Now we are down to one bid that is requiring first student to go out and buy 29 brand-new buses. I can tell you right now, I'm certainly want the children to be safe, but I don't know what is the expense to the taxpayers of having brand spanking new buses, because I can tell you what, I never have a brand spanking new car. So that's a question that I.
Transporting 40-plus people a day?
No, but are you saying that the buses that are not new are unsafe? Is that what you're telling me then, on the
Of course
flip
they're-
side?
Of course they're not unsafe.
Well, why
We
do we
also
need
have heavy
brand-new
equipment. As we touched
buses?
on earlier on in the presentation, we had a lot of equipment upgrades. Okay, we had a lot of surveillance cameras and all of that stuff that is easier to do when you're buying new buses. Okay, to retrofit with that equipment is a larger expense.
Why did we put 29 buses in the RFP? Sir, I'm sorry, but the reason that I think the board wanted a consultant was because since April and May, we've been trying to answer what I consider a fundamental busing question in our district, is why, when we have 1,200 less students, are we running the same number of buses? So I have not seen anything to date that shows me why I can't, I still haven't answered that question in my mind. I think I have it on pretty good authority that if we combined routes, that we could reduce by at least 3 buses.
I spoke to this the last time I was here, and we were still running with 29 buses, and the savings was not to cut a bus, it was to get the children home sooner. That's what we looked at for efficiency.
We did not look at efficiencies in combining bus routes?
I look at efficiency as getting the children in a safe way home faster or from home to school.
That's not my question.
And
Did
to
we look
arrive
at
to the schools
efficiencies?
so they're not there late.
Did we look at efficiencies in either rerouting or combining bus routes? Because that's what I thought, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that's why we hired a consultant, because I had asked
If
our internal people to do that, and I
Let's see what the
wasn't getting an
consultant-
answer.
Let's see what the consultant says.
if I could speak to that.
Please.
I am in the process right now of analyzing the runs, okay? Looking at combining the high school and middle, reducing the time for the elementary, as well as looking at, if you reduce buses, what are the ramifications? That's what I'm looking at right now. As far as the number of buses being the culprit for people not bidding, it's totally opposite. When a contractor comes in, the more buses, the better. It's better for them, they can spread their overhead. So it's not a case of, because it's 29, you didn't get the bidders. It's a case of, it just didn't make business sense for them. And again, I was in the business for 27 to 28 years in this area. I would do the same thing. If it wasn't my current contract, I'd have to look at it and say, does it make, is it fiscally responsible for me to put a bid on that? And if it's not, then I'm not going to do it. It really had nothing to do with the count of buses. As far as students, even though your student count is low, students don't dictate the number of buses you have. It's time and area. That's what dictates.
I understand
Okay.
that. I understand that. And I understand what a wide geographic area we have.
It is.
I understand that there are less students, that you're gonna have more stops because you've got less students, that you've got buses running 5 minutes apart. I also see what your average bus counts are, and I have called around to other districts to find their average bus counts. And I'm a little surprised when I hear that we really don't wanna go above 50, because I'm being told that other districts are typically running up in the 60s. Is that not correct?
We do too. We do too.
Some of your buses do, but very few of these buses do. So the number 29 does not have to do with, I understand there's efficiencies in numbers, but there's also a cost associated with a higher number when we may not need that number of buses. One of the things that I had said, because I talked to somebody who does contract RFPs on a worldwide basis, was why wouldn't we just go out with an RFP and say, this is what we currently have, why don't you guys come in with what you think we should have? And I guess that brings me back to another question, because I just reviewed your weekly logs, and reviewing this, we have this edulog, and we have First Student telling us they're gonna help us with our efficiencies, but I've not seen anything to date on anything, so
First
I'd just
Student's
like you to
in.
speak to that.
Yeah, no, this is what we require in the new RFP.
That's required in the new RFP, but they're not required to help us in routing efficiencies now?
The current contract, Sandy, you work hand in hand with them.
Yes, we do.
Brian, if I could?
Go ahead.
Well, what we did, and I'm glad Principal Georgian and Assistant Principal staff are here, we did reduce. I think we need more than 29 buses, not less. We reduced the bus down to 28. I had potential grievances with the union and supervision of kids. I had kids from Sandown getting home 45 minutes later than they currently do. We probably need more than 29 buses. I think that's the minimum number, and we did that. We looked for efficiencies, we combined, we moved around, and it just was not, it was not something that worked for Sandown and their frustration. I appreciate, you got a whole school full of kids, you got teachers that go off the clock at a certain time, and we're asking them to stay an extra half hour,
I know,
45
but
minutes.
isn't there a difference between the start and end times of those two schools, and isn't that part of the issue that has to do with the overages on contractual times?
Has to do with number of students, distances traveled, number of buses needed, and they can't get buses. They need that bus to transport those kids. We have all those, we've done all those modifications. Over here, combining routes is going to create a transportation problem for us at the high school and middle school, right? So they did that before. That's why they changed it to separate buses for middle school and high school.
I don't think that was the reason they changed it way back when. And
Oh, I
also,
didn't
we
know-
we haven't looked at,
I didn't imagine my
Then-
conversation with the chief when she told me that that's going to create a transportation problem. I didn't imagine that conversation. I asked her,
okay,
why did
so-
we change it?
So why did we just spend all this money to hire a consultant when you already knew all those answers?
I don't claim to be an expert on things that I'm not.
Well-
I just know what I've experienced, and I'm sharing that with you.
You've just told me we can't reduce buses, we need more buses. You've told me that we can't combine buses.
That's not what I
and
said. Don't
thought-
put
No,
words in my mouth,
no,
Dr.
that's
Farah.
exactly
That's
what
not
I
what I said.
Okay.
That's not what I said.
Okay, so.
Don't put words in my mouth,
Okay,
please.
I
Okay.
apologize. I apologize if I thought that's what I heard you said. Maybe I didn't. Sorry. But, so are we gonna look at combining bus routes to see if we can save both
I've already
time and
started,
money?
I've already started that process.
Okay.
And can
No.
I speak to? I'd like to speak to that because every year it is something that, it has been my job to do the routing. And I get the student counts at the schools, and, I have to divvy them up as to what there is. I always looked for where we can try to save on a bus. It's always been on my mind to do that. And this year, I kind of take the blame because I was really trying to be proactive and take a bus away in Sandown, and also at the Danville Elementary level. It not only affected the Sandown North, but it affected our Sandown Middle School students having that bus taken away, because we did have middle school students on the buses that were over 60. Sandown is one of our biggest towns, and a lot of those students do ride the bus. And having over 60 on a bus, you can ask any of the middle school administrators the difficulty they were having at the beginning of the school. Most of our complaints were from parents telling me that kids were sitting on the floor and 4 to a seat. I had to view videos just to prove or disprove what they were telling me. So not only adding this bus back, it has improved our atmosphere on those buses. I can tell you, I have not had one complaint since January 16th when we added this new bus. So I think, time-wise, we lost some minutes, but now we've gained it. But we've also made the environment better for our middle school students riding those buses. The other thing I'd like to speak to is, you're focused on the 29 buses that we have right now, but that's just part of the contract. Our contract is given as a per bus per day figure. So if we do in the coming year, when we get together and we get routing ready for next year, and we find out that we can reduce a bus or 2 buses, That's what the contract price will be reduced by, is that daily price. So even though it says 29 in the contract, we're not holding to that because there is the, in the contract, RFP, that if we decide to diminish a bus, that we can, or if we decide to add a bus, we can. So that was part of that,
That's correct.
right?
I spoke to that the last time I presented at the economies of scale. So if you thought we'd get a better price by bidding less buses.
I know, but in the meantime, we have to budget for what this contract is calling for, which means that we have to raise and appropriate that money from the taxpayers regardless of whether we go down 3 buses after the budget is through. We've already, and yes, they may get it back in surplus, but you're raising and appropriating that money.
That's exactly why we've given a responsible budget number for transportation.
Okay. One second. So I assume the 3 in the front of the room would know, like, for example, our adjoining towns, once you get right outside the district, are they being provided their transportation by first student or the other bidder, whether it's
When you say our surrounding towns, you mean-
Derry, Londonderry?
Actually-
I'm just trying to get a general.
I understand. Derry is, I can run them down for you. Derry is first student.
Okay.
Londonderry is STA. Wyndham is STA. Salem is first student. So they're mixed all the way around, correct?
Okay, so these are obviously, these are the 2 that bid.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. I suggest that we put the RFP out again, but we write the RFP ourselves.
Who?
And,
I'm not writing
well, we can just use what we have, but we reduce those, what I consider very onerous first considerations, such as the buses have to be new, such as there has to be a PA inside and out, such that it has to have upgraded surveillance quality. I mean, all of these things are discouraging factors and not necessary. So why don't we take the process back into our own hands where it should have been in the first place, in my opinion, rewrite the RFP, put it out to bid again, and see who we get this time. Obviously, Hampstead has the confidence that they're going to get somebody.
Well, I don't know what Hampstead's confidence is, but I think that's what this board did. That's why we directed to get a consultant to write the RFP, and that's why I asked the question here, that I'm trying to see who are the players in the, I don't know, the general area, the dozen towns, you know.
It is. In surrounding towns, in this area, it's STA and first student.
So
If you
we've
don't
already
mind-
got their bids.
If I could speak to the increase, what's happening right now in the market in New Hampshire is that for years, okay, it was always kept to a 2 or 3%. And that was primarily due to, I've had my customers for years. I want to take care of you. This is what I'm going to give you. And it went on and on and on. What's happened with the unions coming in, and I'm not blaming the unions, but increases in the driver wages, okay? And everything going up, the market didn't keep up with it. So what's happening now is your contractors are saying, well, it makes sense, I have to go up in order to make any sense to take it or not take it. That's why you're seeing such, and it's not just here, it's throughout New Hampshire right now.
So we are, obviously, as you know, a border town here, so who is Haverhill? Who does?
Haverhill is Coppola Bus Service. They only served Haverhill for decades. They don't do anything outside of Haverhill. But we did get Salter. Salter does has some territories in northern Massachusetts. And they were invited, they came to the pre-bid conference,
Correct.
but they did not submit a bid.
I do wonder about going back out to bid, though, and just putting 29 buses out as opposed to 29 brand-new buses, and also notifying at least STA that Hampstead is not willing to do that, and see if they would be willing to bid just Timberlane.
What are your thoughts? This is your area here.
You know, and you can negotiate with any contractor you want. There is nothing restricting you from that at all. I can reach back out to them and say, what are your thoughts if you do this? Or are you willing to come in and negotiate? I can do that. It's really up to you.
Well, I like to go out to both of them, because not that it would be nice to have brand-new buses, but if it's costing us, I don't know what the embedded cost is of that requirement, or the embedded cost of PA systems. I mean, these are all nice things to have, it's great, you know, a GPS application.
These directly impact the operations on a day-to-day basis for us.
Yeah.
They're not nice to haves. They
The brand-new
directly
buses,
impact.
we have to have.
No, the
all-
PA system,
Well,
video surveillance, those are huge.
okay, so, but what about the new buses? I
you
would
prefer a
imagine
com-
there's.
Would you prefer a company in the first year of the contract giving us 5-year-old buses? Because that's what they would be able to do that if we kept.
So all
the same
our
contract.
first student buses right now are 5 years old?
No, but they would be out in their contract to give us 5-year-old buses.
But what would happen is this, if your contract says that over the life of the contract, it can be 5 years, and they have another contract that says it can be no older than 8, or no
Right.
more than 3, they're gonna say, well, wait a minute, I'm gonna bring an older bus in here, and I'm gonna pull that newer bus and put it over here. So even though it's not a case of, we're gonna add these many buses.
I understand that.
Okay.
I get it.
All right.
But I don't think, I don't know,
I don't believe the increase is primarily because the buses are new. I'm looking at a number, I'm like, I know $260,000 doesn't buy 29 brand-new buses.
No way.
Not even close.
No,
And I would say the equivalent of, I don't want our kids getting stale bread at lunch. I want them to have, we want to increase the services. We want to get a better service. There's a little bit of an increase here, and I think Mr. Anderson indicated why. You know, when you stay with the same company over a period of time and you renegotiate without going out to bid, a lot of times you'll see that price won't change, that big jump. But we have that big jump because I think First Student has taken, I'm not going to call it a loss, but I think they've taken a little bit of loss in terms of their delta about money they made in the last few years. And again, I'm not blaming union employees, but since the employees have unionized. But I think not getting new equipment in a brand-new 5-year contract, I think that is short-sighted. I think you are short-serving the district and the taxpayers. I think they should get what they're paying for. Those kids should be in state-of-the-art buses with state-of-the-art equipment for that kind of contract and that kind of money. I don't think the difference is going to make.
Well, that's, I guess, probably the only person in the room that knows those answers is sitting right there in the middle of the table. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? What, you know, Kelly?
Can I just ask a question?
Oh, please, yeah.
So would it be fair to assume that if we just changed we don't need all the amenities to the buses, and we don't need them to be brand new, they could be 5 years old. If we just change that part, is it possible that First Student would still be the only contractor to bid,
Oh, it is possible.
and then we would wind up in the same boat? They could throw the same exact number on it, and then they could not
It's
have to
very
provide.
possible.
So that is possible.
Yes. Especially where Hampstead's already said they're not going to go in on it. Then there's not a case of saying to First Student, well, if we do both together. No, now it's coming back to, you're going to be the only one. They know they're going to be the only one.
They do
And
now.
it kind of gives them the upper hand.
Let me bring some clarification to the Hampstead. Hampstead is looking for their Hampstead-only bid, so they can look at the price that they have in option B, but option B is not on the table right now for them. I don't want to say that they've said, we're not going to go with First Student, we're not going to go with, they want a fiduciary responsibility, I believe is the terms that they shared with me. We want you to get the best deal for Hampstead. And so I can tell you right now, if Hampstead goes with the same company that you go with, it's $108,000 savings. It almost pays for your entire increase in your SAU services in this year, just by Hampstead going in with Timberlane. Is it an option they'll consider? I'm sure at some point they will, but they also want to take a look at their options as well to see if there's a better price for them. You wouldn't blame them, you would do the same thing.
Well, we tried to, but you made it a joint bid.
I didn't make it a joint bid. Am I the bidder now? Did I do the bid? Chairman Boyle?
Okay, please.
There was no authorization for this to go out as a
Okay.
joint bid.
Yeah, okay, listen, we have individual bids and nothing
Yep.
would have changed any different.
You have a policy that says we do that.
Okay, people.
You might wanna look at it.
All right, enough. Mrs. Sherman.
On a positive note, I am pleased to see in the requirements that you would expect the penalty of $250 per occurrence that we don't have buses covered or routes covered. That's huge for parents. That's been a lot of the complaints over the last recent, I'll say, year and a half, that, we're doubled up, and are we dinging them for those occurrences, or $200 a day seems minimal to me, but $250 per occurrence,
Yeah.
so that's a route this way and a route this way, that's $500. Now
That's
we're
correct.
starting to.
It's
look at
$500 a
it-
day, not counting,
Right,
you also won't pay for the daily rate.
yeah, there you go.
But I don't think we're really enforcing that now. I have not been able to, what,
We
how
haven't had
much?
that. We
Well,
haven't
it's
had a,
current
excuse me,
contract.
we haven't had a per occurrence,
Right.
Okay, what are the-
thank you, phrase in the
I
contract,
gave you the
and I'm
figure
trying to
last
say
meeting, too,
positively.
When I was asked.
what was the number? What was that number for penalties?
So do you have an estimate off the top? I think it was slightly less than 10,000, but I had that already at the last meeting, and I gave you that.
Slightly less than 10,000. And then we're also getting paid if, that Mrs. Hodgkins has to drive a bus too? So we get paid that, her salary? How does that work?
So today, let me give you an update.
Well, no, I don't know, I mean, is this related to the bid, or these, it seems like a loaded question.
Well, we have a transportation consultant, we have all the transportation, and maybe it's a little, it's just a
I
question.
was just
It's
trying to make
not
a positive
loaded or-
comment
So I
that
think-
it would
I
be
think
great to have
because
that in the
there was a tremendous
contract.
amount of work by all that went into
It
this.
is.
And really to come up here and have the question process, if there was some collusion, is insult.
Well, okay,
Everybody at this
okay,
table.
all right,
Well,
all right, listen.
could, Mr. Boyle, could you put our employees in their place,
I was
please?
gonna say,
Thank
I
you.
don't really need any, I don't really need any coaching, if you will, in terms of, and people better just lighten up here a little bit. Listen, thanks. This all happened tonight, truth be told, because Kim pushed this a long time ago to try to get transportation. This started, wow, in the summer?
April or May, yeah.
Yeah, so,
It's been on this calendar.
so, and then, basically, you came in here tonight at our request, because this is one of the two topics that is being brought to our attention that is underfunded in a default. So that's why you're here. Now, I'm still trying to, the good news, here we are in February 1st. We as a board have to decide where we go from here. It's apparent to me that there's not several bus companies out there available for Timberlane. That-
You're correct. You're
And,
correct.
and as I'm looking at these other schools in the area, these two companies are doing the bulk of the work in our immediate area, which is all that really matters. Doesn't really matter what's happening in Nashua or up in Berlin. It's just, what's going on here, it all that really matters.
That's correct, but you'll also find out that when it comes to New Hampshire, STA and First Student are the biggest players.
Okay, thank you for telling me that, sharing that. So we're gonna have to get involved, I would think, in some kind of negotiation here. It looks like our option, our window is closing here. I agree with your comment, I agree with Kelly Wall's comment, but basically you don't, truth be told here, I mean, here we are in a public meeting, and now the cards are on the table. So, first student's position gets stronger by the minute.
It does.
Well, though, I still think you
Interesting
can
way
go-
to go about this.
Well, I think those, you could still go back to STA and talk to them. So typically in this sort of process, would you as the consultant or Mr. Geary go out and start negotiating with the two bidders?
But
Is
it
that appropriate?
I do want to clarify in the public, in a sealed bid process, this goes against everything of what a sealed bid process is. Okay, now that both vendors know what the bids are because they're public documents,
Mm-hmm.
I can't see it being an honest process.
So if
What do you
can
mean
go
an
back
honest
to
process?
STA,
If
but
both
not to First
companies-
Student.
If both companies know what the other were bidding before,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not sure that's advantageous to us. I mean, we had a good process.
So we don't try to negotiate now? That's kind of unusual, because I do know at the town level that once we had looked at a bid or accepted a bid, we would still negotiate downward.
And
And
you've
as-
got
as
one
I
of the two saying, well, now there's only technically only one on the table. Right? You have the other vendor saying, hey, if I can get Hampstead, I'll consider doing Timberlanes. But if I can't get Hampstead, I don't want to do
Yeah, it's
Timberlane.
not worth me putting up
Well,
putting a shop
we
up
don't know that.
Yes,
They
we do
just-
know that.
No. We
Right
know
in
that
here.
they bid, look, I've read that document too. We know that
Okay.
they bidded on both, and we know that they didn't bid on Timberlane. That doesn't mean they wouldn't bid on Timberlane if Hampstead wasn't in the picture.
but that's getting
That
into-
doesn't, we don't know that. I think we should put this out to bid again and change these, what I consider rather draconian requirements, and try to solicit more bids from the 5 who are interested parties. I have a problem with that $250 per incident, too. I think that's another issue. That is very severe. You know, all the changes worked against the little guys making a bid. All of them did.
I don't think there are any little guys.
Well,
There are any little
What
guys.
little guys are we
So
talking
now
about?
you
here?
think
Salter?
250 is
I
too
would
much,
use
but
the,
200
I would
was
use the
still-
logical comparison. If you take first student's bid combined with Hampstead and Timberlane, and look at their Timberlane alone, the Timberlane alone is higher, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so
Correct.
I can guarantee you that STA's bid will be higher if it's alone,
Sure.
and you might end up with equipment that isn't sufficient. And you hit the nail on the head. Their position now negotiating, because this is a public, you know,
We know what First Student did, so now we'll fix ours and underbid them.
STA is not going to come in with a lower bid without Hampstead. It's not going to happen.
Well,
If we change our requirements, it might happen. We should put the RFP out again with different requirements.
did someone turn that off, whatever that is?
I'm going to make a motion that we reissue the RFP with less onerous requirements, and I would be happy to draft them myself and present them to the board.
I'm all set.
By looking at other districts' RFPs for transportation.
The problem, oh,
I don't,
You got a second?
there's no second, I don't see
I
this as
don't,
the
I
answer.
think, I don't think there's time to do that at this point. I know we're only in February, but I can tell you now, from looking at RFPs that I looked at online for transportation, typically they go out in November, December, correct?
That's correct.
So we're already late on getting this. No, the bids are due in December. The bids are due back in November, December, not the RFP going out. So we're already late, correct?
Yeah, well,
We're behind the eight, because really,
there's
typically
really no
you'd
late.
want this
You
negotiated.
will have some people coming out later than that. The key being that, depending on your buses, if they have to order buses, then you get down towards the end of the year. They really should start ordering around March in order to get them in for September. So you start to,
And we're requiring new buses, so I don't think there's time. I don't think there's time to now go out to draft another RFP and go out. You have to give a couple weeks, you're gonna have to have another pre-hearing. I just don't think there's time right now.
Well, I am not voting on one-bid contracts again, and this is the biggest contract that we have. I'm not doing it. Every single time we go out to bid, we get one person back. This is ridiculous.
I do know, because I talked to some other districts, it's not atypical that these are the only two players.
Just said that.
And we
It really
should
is.
have 2 bids then. Why do we only have 1?
It's not, no one in this, it's not up to anyone in
It's
this
not
room,
up to
Donna.
us.
If someone chooses for whatever reason not to bid, they chose not to bid.
It had to do with the fact that it went out with Hampstead, when it was never
Okay, that's your
authorized to go
opinion.
out to Hampstead.
That's your opinion.
That's not
Let it
true.
go.
They
It
had
was
an-
never
They
authorized.
had an option to bid on Hampstead only, or Hampstead and Timberlane together, or Timberlane only, or Timberlane and Hampstead together. Read the documents, Donna, they're right in front of you.
And again, I don't think
I read
we should
every
be
single
speaking
one,
for a
even
vendor.
though I had to sit in the foyer to do so.
Okay, listen, so, another question I have, the consultant, is this what's going on out there right now, is these other districts are going out to bid for transportation? Do you people have any feel for what's going on in terms of increases and?
Oh, I do. I mean, I've done one where, in fact, it was up north. We sent out the same 5 or 6. We ended up with 1, and it went up about 32%.
32%?
Just did one in southern New Hampshire. Again, put it out at 5, 2 bid. And that was it.
And what are we up, close to 20% for the first?
14.
No, 14.
14 the first
14.
year.
So this, our new rate is for next year would be 2.158626? Is that what we're looking at?
For home to school, correct.
So that's less than the proposed budget, which is 2.313?
Right, but we also have, the main driver for doing evaluation is home to school. That's the lion's share of the contract. We also have a late bus. We have ESY, we have CTE, which is the Volt program, and field trips and athletics. All seen, we have ESY at about 14%, CTE at about 14%. We calculated the rate. Late bus at about 8%, and field trip and athletics at about 10%.
So what's the number? Because next week's deliberative in the
So-
proposed budget is out.
Is that gonna be enough then, what we've got in the proposed budget?
I think it's over, because the proposed budget was up, what was it, about 16 or 17%? I can calculate it out. It's over budgeted in the proposed budget.
That's not
Well, it is if it was 14% and some of these are not up, but 8%.
Well, do you know what's in the budget, Jeff?
16% is the
I know
total.
it's 2.313 is in the budget.
So, one of the, Mr. Boyle,
Okay.
one of the things I'd like to know from the consultant is what our historical use has been of the other categories. So we just heard how much the other categories are up, but in order for us to really assess the cost, how much do we use of those other categories historically? That's what I'd like to know.
So how many late buses, how many CTE buses? how
Which,
many field trip
or
buses,
which
how many
questions are they
athletic
answering?
questions,
Are
which
we
ones
answering the
they
budget
answering?
question? When we answer the questions one at a time?
Well, I think that's all, that pertains to the budget question. That number has to feed into the budget number.
Could we get the
Okay,
business
so,
manager to answer the question about
Yep.
the,
yeah, let's go for Jeff.
Before we ask another
Percentage.
question?
What's in the budget, Jeff?
340 was the increase that I calculated, which was 17.5% on the regular transportation side. So that's just regular education, pupil transportation for home to school, late bus, ESY, CTE, field trips, athletics. So that increase was about 309,000, well, about 299,000 on the contract. We have another increase in that account category. So to some degree, yeah, we are over budgeted by 3% or 2%.
So
whatever.
there's enough money in the proposed
In the
budget?
operating
in the
budget.
operating?
Okay, that's
Correct.
the question. That's the
Correct.
question.
Now, in terms of utilization, if I could just to address a couple of things that I've heard that might be useful for the board to hear. I too shared your concerns on the bus yard situation. Do we need to have someone located in our district? Is that prohibitive on someone coming in and bidding on the contract? And I'd asked that question informally to someone in the industry, and the response was, the bus yard's there. Right? It's right over here. And it really isn't prohibitive because they would just come in and take over that bus yard. It's a good deal for the bus company because the facility's already upfitted. This is a great deal for the landlord because of all the tenants that you see on 125, guess who's going to pay your rent? The bus company. And it helps us because although we're anchored at one end of our regional town structure, we do have a response time that we'd be able to adhere to for, certainly for a significant majority of our schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I shared that concern, and I believe you could probably speak to it. What does a landlord do next to a school campus with a shop upfitted for 38 buses?
I can tell you what I did when I had this area. If a contract was up in June, that same year, I'd have the lease ending the end of July. That would give me enough time to evacuate the building, and the lease would be terminated. Next person coming in cuts their own deal, and normally would move, if they want to move in that facility. Some may not. But that's normally what would happen.
And it wouldn't be outside of industry practice to have your successor be a
Correct.
successor that's
Absolutely.
separate deal, doesn't involve us at all,
No, that's correct.
but it's there. And it makes sense for the landlord too, because guess what? They're gonna pay the rent.
That's correct.
And what else do you do, again, with a 38 bus
Right.
yard and shop?
Still gotta outfit the shop.
That's
Whoever
correct.
the new company is.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the old company takes their stuff
Right.
and their buses and says goodbye,
Right.
and you've got the lot, and you've got maybe the old Coke building there.
I don't know how much inside would
Right,
go
there,
with it.
there's still a cost to it. You're
Sure.
correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, sure. So that was the first thing, and I'm going to put some perspective on it. And we really can't blame unions. I've heard unions come up a couple times here. Sure, that's at play here, but we really can't blame the unions. I was shocked when I actually ran the numbers on what labor is, because for me, it doesn't. I work in multiples. In an industry, you work in multiples, and the multiples just don't work. Where we're at right now with our bus compensation relative to our daily rate. It just doesn't work. It's 60 or 70% potentially of our daily rate cost in labor. This is not a slam against our bus drivers. This is nothing against the unions. This is the reality of ACA coming in the middle of our bus contract, which we have not felt at all. This is really a tight labor market in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking, and I could almost factor 18% increases just to keep the staff that they have.
Sure.
And I look up at that board and I say 3%, 3%, 3%. Now we're having to play a little catch up, and even the 14%. So I know that the new buses are an issue, and the questions arise. When I look at the labor percentages relative to what they're getting every day, if I'm your guy, or if I'm the guy down
Right.
there, if I'm that accountant, if I'm that finance manager, I'm saying these labor statistics don't work for a consulting company with no assets. So if you're just a company that has labor that goes out there,
Yeah.
this doesn't work for that. Forget about a company that has buses and overhead and
Correct.
inspections and tires and insurance. I don't know how they do it.
Well, again,
Yeah, just perspective. That's all.
thank you.
Yeah, I think we've been lucky. I'm pretty happy
Yep.
that they have not balked on that contract, because we've been the beneficiary of not having to absorb any of
Yeah.
these costs.
So-
It doesn't make it any easier.
One second, Peter, I want to hear, Mrs. Green, you had that question about the other parts of it? Because I want to see if we can wrap this thing
Yeah,
up. here.
so how much historically have we used of these other ones, the summer school, the athletic, the vocational, and so on, the light buses, and the Performing Arts Center? How much historically has that contributed to the overall cost of the contract?
Oh, not a lot. If we were to look at let's say $300,000 increase, late bus $2,400, ESY $4,900 increase.
No, that isn't what I'm asking. I'm asking how much of what we pay the bus company is made up of all these ancillary categories.
On a $2.1 million, $2.1.5 million regular daily home to school bus contract, we pay about $130,000.
130,000 would be for the rest of those things,
Correct,
just lumping them all together.
correct. And this is just regular people transportation.
Well, when I look at the sublines, I see 70,000 transportation other, 104 for teams, 34 for field trips, 13.5 for music.
Mhm.
So that's I think closer to 200,000.
Well, yeah, okay, so if we add the field trip athletics, that's 167,000 as well. So for the late bus, ESY, CTE, 130,000, a little less than that, and about 150,000 for field trips, athletics, music programs.
What's the point of the question, though?
I'm not sure.
Well, the point is, because if we should ever be lucky enough to get a second bid, the second bidder has different prices for these categories, and it's hard to figure out the exact cost of the contract if you don't know what percentage of those ancillary cost factors go into your total payment. So that's my question.
Either way, it's a pretty minor,
It's minor.
very minor part of it.
Well, I didn't know that, so I'm glad to know that.
Okay. Peter, you had a question?
Yeah, so,
Under 10%.
so, Jeff.
Yeah.
When I looked at the default budget you crafted, you had a number of pupil transportation services of 2,313,592. Is that still correct in your view?
Approximately.
Okay.
It'd probably be 20 or 30,000 lower, but we have two items in there, and we have regular and special.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you about the special next, and that's at 1175001? That's approximately correct as well?
If that's, yep.
Thank you.
Well, I just calculated what the new figure would be based on a 14% versus a 17.5. I show that the new figure should be 2.248, which is a difference of $65,000 versus what is in the budget now at 2.313.
What's the difference?
65,000.
65,000.
65,000.
The other differences to consider, but I know it's probably surplus, is that 14% is probably, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, if Hampstead goes along with the same company, and we have that policy, DJD, I'm supposed to look for bulk purchasing, which is what we do, it's your policy, that'll be more like 11.5%, 12%, correct?
It'll be lower.
Or lower, yeah.
But when you're looking at that bottom, at that as the total of the transportation, we also have crossing guards, we also have, if we have to replace equipment, relative to that, software costs, things like that. We have other things in that line item that have not changed in the default. They haven't gone up in the default budget.
But they're in that, but they're in that category.
Correct. And so when I went up,
So $65,000 could be those kinds of things you're
Correct.
mentioning.
No, you guys aren't following what I'm saying. All right, the current transportation budget was 1.972. You projected an increase of 17.5%, which brought that up to 2.313. Okay?
okay,
Now, this increase is 14%, not 17.5. So I calculated the difference between those two, and there's a delta of $65,000. Are you saying there are other things within here that are gonna go up more than 14%? Because I've already calculated in a 14% increase for anything that's ancillary to the bus contract.
Kim, I think too, you're also gonna want the answer to the special ed increase, because that's part of this too, but you're not there
But
yet.
that's not part of this contract.
No, that's not part of, that's
No,
transportation.
I'm gonna wanna see that contract.
But that's transportation too.
Correct.
Okay,
And
I just don't wanna lose sight of that, because that was part of the increase.
I think the chair asked for that contract, so
Yeah.
we could take a look at it.
so we are gonna be discussing the default. If you'd like to discuss those specific budget numbers, we can
No.
do.
Here's what
No.
here's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to see where this is going, because the default is a bottom line budget, and I'll be reading that very shortly. But I'm trying to see the lay of the land here, it's a total number here. So I'm trying to see what's going on transportation-wise, then we're gonna deal with the special ed. So we look at the total.
We have special ed
By
transportation.
law, it's a total number,
But,
you
Well,
know.
I think we kinda know where we're heading. I think
You'll see shortly here.
we know where we're headed with transportation, okay? Right now, we've got one bid. It looks like it's up about 14% overall. I think we've determined that we would like you to go out and talk to, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, both these bidders, see if STA wants to come in with Timberlane by themselves. My guess is, I'm not gonna.
I don't know if we can,
We can't do that. Okay, we can't do that. Then it's time to, I don't think we have time to go out for another bid. I think you're gonna have to negotiate with First Student, see if we can do any better.
well, I don't know if you can,
Negotiate, they gave us a bid.
I don't know if you can.
It's not unusual to negotiate once a
I-
bid is in.
I don't disagree with you, Kim, but I guess we gotta find out legally if you can. I understand, I hear both sides of this.
Well, we have to consult, is it legal to negotiate down once you've accepted a bid?
You can negotiate with either one of them.
Yep, okay.
even, may I?
Yep.
Even by like changing some of the terms of the bid?
No. Well, you
I
can.
mean, can we go back and say, they don't all have to be new, 40% should be new?
No, we're not
Okay.
doing that, we're not doing that.
Well, I don't see I don't see why they'd negotiate then. If we're
Yeah.
not giving anything up,
They could not like it, they both could pull your bids, and then we have no bus.
Right.
in a lawsuit.
This is the figure we gave, you don't want it?
I mean, it's a risk.
Well, that's what they could say. This is the figure we gave. If you don't want it, then that's where you're at. It's like,
You
if
can
you,
ask the question, yeah.
Peter, you just made, you had an analogy right before we came in here about college. If you didn't ask, you wouldn't have got that.
That's true.
There you go. It's the same sort of thing. It's
There's-
exactly the same thing.
It's different, though, because that's in a multi-bid situation. And this is but we've had a public opening. People know what the bids are. And know that there was only one bid. There's no incentive for them to move a penny. Not one penny, unless we're willing to give up something. And we can't just go back to them and give up something, right? Unless we went out to bid again.
Right.
No, you can. You can.
You can't.
Oh, I thought
Yes.
you said we couldn't, like,
No, I didn't say you couldn't.
okay, as long as you can.
So
Well-
I guess we need to,
I think,
we need to move forward and try to negotiate with what we have.
well, I think the move tonight is because I don't think we should be awarding any contracts tonight here, and we don't have to. I think we're going to have to revisit this at the next meeting. I can see where our hands are tied. I'm a little, it's got nothing to do with the three people in front of the room here, but it's amazing to me that this industry is that limited. Amazing. But I agree with your analysis, just because that was a concern I shared 6 months ago, that this.
It's the market. You'd run from these barges, you would say.
Well, I just know, I've,
Brian, if you were the only bidder and they asked you to bid again and you knew you were the only bidder,
Well,
you might increase your bid.
that could be, but it's just, but as I mentioned, if you remember months ago in your office, that was a concern I had about transportation just turning on the national news. I'm not hearing any good thing about buses and this kind of stuff. I don't see hundreds of people getting in the transportation business.
No.
And I can see why. So,
And I think if there were to be some good news, these numbers don't comport with what their actual costs are. I think we've really had the benefit of the bargain here for years.
so.
I'm happy with that.
I think to me, the main focus, I want to see what's going on here with first of all, we need an update here from consultant. We heard a lot about you, but we never met you. So.
Good stuff.
Is that what?
It's all good.
That's it. It was nothing bad. So we needed to get an update what's going on. So the bottom line here is, from a budgetary standpoint, there's enough money in the proposed budget and not enough money in the default budget from transportation.
Can we get him to say
So-
yes and no, or yes and yes? Get him to definitively say that, if we could, Mr. Chairman.
What was the
Well,
question?
well,
With the
that's
business
fine.
manager.
If that makes you feel good, okay.
I'd like a definitive answer. There's money enough in the proposed budget, should we go with this proposal?
Correct, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
In the default budget that the school board has voted to accept, is there enough money in the default budget?
No.
That's fine.
That's.
Great, no problem. I'll handle that later. All right. Is there something you want to say about that, Donna?
Yeah, not the default.
Yeah.
So why don't we, I have two questions. All of the vendors, the two vendors who bid, have route efficiency software that they provide for free. So I don't know why we haven't been using the vendor's software that the First Student has right now. So one of my questions is, forgive me, but I'm not clear about what the consultant is going to be continuing to do, because if we go with First Student, they're already offering to maximize our routing with their free software. And
Actually, just as a point of clarification, we included that in the RFP, but there would be a cost to have First Student come in and do the analysis of that. That's why we included them to own the routing software.
I didn't see that in the bids. I did not see that. That there would be extra cost for that?
I didn't see that either. I thought that was included.
No, I did
It's
not see
part-
that.
it's part of what
When
they were
they
bidding.
do a route package, it's part of, it's included in your per day price.
It's
There is a
included
cost for it.
in the per-day price.
So
Right.
it is.
So we're already
included.
It's-
paying for it, in
It's
other words.
So it's not free.
Right, so you'd wait until the new contract in order for them to do it.
Okay, but that means that we don't need the consultant to do that. We're already paying for it, we might as well make use of it when we award the contract.
It-
We're already paying for it.
I mean, I'm not a transportation expert. Does that make sense to you?
Well,
I mean, it puts you out of business, but
Well, it doesn't
can
put
you
me out of
answer the
business,
question?
but
Because I don't, well, not out of business,
My point
but.
being, okay, what I just said was, they wouldn't do that until next year.
Right, they wouldn't do
They're
it.
not gonna do it for free now,
Yeah, no.
because it's included, and no company does it for free. There is a cost, and they include it in the daily.
So, but it doesn't make any sense to do it now anyway, because I don't think we're gonna change bus routes in February.
Well,
This
you-
takes a tremendous amount of work to prepare for bus route changes, right? Sandy?
There is,
Okay.
there is, there is.
So if we don't do it in February, we're not gonna do it next year, even though, I mean, this contract will be awarded July 1, right? And then this software will be implemented and able to be used.
Probably about September, October,
The software wouldn't be ready till September, October.
depending on what they have. Even with Edgelog, I'm sure when it came into here, it took a couple of months to get set up and going. You have to get the maps, 911 maps, that has to go out, they do that, then you gotta upload your students, geocode them,
I know, but we already have Edulog.
but they're getting their own software. You're not giving
They're
them,
using Edulog.
so you're gonna do it then?
No, they're using Edulog
They
too.
can't, that's your license. They have to get their own license, and they may go with a TransFinder and not an Edgelog,
Well,
if they get
They
around it.
mentioned Edulog in their bid.
That's fine, but they still have to have their own license. They can't use yours.
Well, no, but if it's the same, it would be like if I have an Excel file here,
Mhm.
and then I take it and go to my computer at work, it's still the same software program, so I don't have to build it from scratch. So if you've already got all your data in Edulog, all they're doing is taking your data and putting it into their licensed software, isn't that right?
Okay, yeah.
It's a
No,
question, I'm not
it-
saying.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but it is a process. They're gonna wanna verify that the
Right.
information's correct.
Especially if they're gonna be responsible for the information.
That's
they'd-
correct.
They'd wanna check it to make sure.
Absolutely.
I would.
Well, that's true, but I guess it.
Okay, again, all
Well,
right,
I had 2 points, though, that was only
let's
one
wrap it
point.
up real quick.
So one, I don't really know what the consultant is doing, and I think we should release the consultant from his service right
Daily
now.
reports in the package.
All right,
um,
listen,
what has
And-
been done.
Tom, I'll handle it.
And I would also think that someone should approach both the companies, ask them to rebid, or we should start a process of negotiation. But we shouldn't leave this meeting just hanging like this. Somebody has to go out there, authorized by the board, to start some negotiation. One of the points of negotiation could be, will you try to efficiently reroute our bus service right now to start early? That could be one of the things that we could ask for. We could ask for any multitude of things, but we should start the dialogue now.
Well, and that's what I thought, do we need a
Well,
motion to do that? 'Cause
I don't think we can do either one of those things.
Why?
I wouldn't do it as of right now.
Do what? Well, one, I'm not in agreement with releasing the consultant, but I am in
Right.
agreement with you going out to just talk to these two bidders, which you said is common practice. Is that not correct?
It does happen, but you can
I'm not
do
saying
it.
rebid. I'm
No,
saying
no,
you go out and
You can
talk
do
to
it. The
them.
only thing I would ask, because every district has their own policies, is that you run it by your district attorney to make sure that he's comfortable with it, and then go from there.
That seems to me where we should go.
Okay, so who is gonna negotiate with these people?
You look like the most likely candidate, Mr. Boyle.
Interesting.
I would.
Interesting.
I would think that.
Not my thing.
I don't, I would think that somebody from the,
Administration, I believe the superintendent has the ability to negotiate it.
Okay.
I think in order to effect an effective negotiation, we need to look at those terms that we think might be able to move or that we'd be interested in, and perhaps approach both with those requests equally, so everyone's on the same playing field. So if we didn't want 29 new buses, what are the parameters? Let's put that out to both. If we didn't want, or we wanted early routing, what are the parameters? Let's put that out to both and accumulate those terms, send them out and see how they come back.
I agree.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be concerned about mid-year bus changes. They're not pretty, but we've done them a number of times mid-year, and it's not preferred. But it's been done. It's about communication and getting the word out and working with the principals. It could be done.
Okay, so the board wants to authorize the superintendent to go out and negotiate with these two companies?
Or somebody from the superintendent's
Designate.
delegate.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need a motion?
Do we need a motion for that?
It's part of your policy. I work for you, they work for me.
Yep, yep.
All right, I think that's where we leave it then.
Okay.
And then hopefully, do you think 2 weeks is enough time? I mean, to come back, at least come back in an update in 2 weeks?
Is that me?
I don't know if that, I'm not trying to be unreasonable, it's just a question. Is 2 weeks reasonable? Why don't we say 2 weeks, and if it's not, then you
Yeah,
can
well,
work
the
through
thing
the
is,
superintendent.
when would we have to award this contract for the next school year?
They have to have buses by July 1st.
July 1st.
The earlier the,
Okay,
Earlier the better, because
Right.
like you said,
to get
you've
them.
got to order new buses by March.
yeah, so you have to, so it doesn't feel like there's a lot of time on the clock here.
Could I suggest we wait to see what Hampstead does?
Well, I thought about that, it looks like we're gonna be waiting at least a couple weeks anyway.
That'll be well after the election. I already spoke to them today.
Hampstead is not gonna, they,
It'll be in
okay, well,
So, but the election is
March 13th.
March
13th.
13th, so it's 6 weeks from now.
I think we allow negotiations to occur, and then you come back in 2 weeks and update us, if that's fair? Okay.
I don't see any harm in that.
Well, I don't feel comfortable with that because they don't have any board oversight over what kind of things we think are maybe negotiable.
But they have the
Listen,
expertise.
That's their thing,
Well, their expertise got us here.
okay? Donna, again, that's good, all right, so, let's, so does the board want to authorize the superintendent's team to negotiate this and come back in the next couple of weeks and give us an update,
Yes.
okay?
Okay,
Is that the consent? So it's by consent?
by
Like
consent.
consent of the board,
I
great,
just want to go on record saying I think it's a bad idea.
okay? All right. Now, while you three are here, the special ed transportation contract, it must be a multi-year contract,
Correct.
and what year are we in?
There we go. So we entered into that contract in June of 2016.
Yep.
It is for the 16-17, 17-18, 18-19 years, with 2 one-year extensions through 19-20 and 20-21.
Are those optional extensions?
Correct.
Or, okay,
Yep, mutual agreement.
mutual.
Okay, so it's already stated by contract increases per year, is that what's going on?
Correct.
So could you read those out, starting with the first year first?
Sure, district vehicles, they have priced them in pairs, so we don't use them in pairs, but you just take the amount and divide it by half. So 81,180 in 16-17, 83,615.40, 17-18, 86,123.86 in 18-19, 88,707.57 in 19-20, and 91,368.80 in 2021. And then there are other ancillary charges for hourly charges relating to different activities, but as a general proposition, you'd be going from $37.95, 16-17, $39.09, 17-18, $40.26 in 18-19, $41.46 in 19-20, and $42.71 in the 20 to 21 year.
So that's a current contract we have.
Correct.
And that's, so how does that total out?
Sorry?
It's a per vehicle type thing?
Hourly.
Hourly.
Those are for our different placements, out of district placements, or if you need them on an hourly basis.
Okay, so
So.
how did you calculate that out?
How to calculate, well, I looked at the schedule. How did I calculate the?
Well, obviously, because I'm hearing you're telling me that we're between $2,000 and $3,000 off in a default. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
50.
So how did you come up with that number?
Would this be helpful? I didn't know we were talking about it, but I'm happy to share.
Sure. Please.
Well, I guess the question, the broader question is that the proposed increase in special ed transportation is approximately 27%. But from what you just said, those increases year to year are between 2.5% and 3.5%. So I'm not quite understanding why in the lump sum it's up 27% over last year.
Number of buses. Number of buses, the number of placements that we have on our, as you'll see if you look at the special transportation, the home to school in district, you'll see the increase, right? So we're at,
7 buses.
and we don't, we don't anticipate that number changing, so that's a 3%. Where we experience the greatest change is the home to school and out of district. And as we have our district, out of district placements, we could go from 7 buses to 10 buses easily. Our out of district placements are going up. We cannot count on, although we do benefit from, in certain cases, shared rides. So if we have another district that may be able to share that bus with us, we can reduce that cost in half. And that's what that picture is looking like.
What's the SY?
Extended school year.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks.
summer.
Thanks.
We also pay for monitors on certain of our buses. And whether it's in district or out of district, we pay for those monitors. We expect the in-district monitors to be level, but we are anticipating a greater need for out-of-district monitors.
Okay.
So this main driver on special ed is that you think that you're gonna increase the number of buses that go home to school out of district from 7 buses to 10 buses?
Yes,
And each bus costs approximately $61,000?
correct. Well, yes, just for the bus.
So, is that like one person, or you have a bunch of people going?
We try and ride share
So-
within our district to the extent possible, to the extent that we
Well,
can.
we contract a whole bus, are those, you mean the small buses?
Smaller buses, yes.
And those run 61,000 a year,
Correct.
approximately? So we don't know this for sure, we're just kind of making some projection that we're going from
Correct.
7 to 10 buses?
We know we've got 7, right?
Correct.
7 is for in-district, out-of-district, we have more than that.
We have more than 7 in out-of-district placements.
What kind of number of placements?
I know that.
Mr. Chairman, if we're done talking about the regular pupil transportation contract, can we release Mr. Anderson?
Sure.
Because he hasn't had any contractual
Sure.
obligation to this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we have an obligation to bus those out-of-district placements, whether it's 7 buses or 12 buses.
Mhm.
And we need to have enough money to cover those costs.
We have a legal obligation
Yes.
on that transportation.
Yes.
Out-of-district placements are not this district's preference, and certainly every effort is made to accommodate our students in district. Thank you.
That's right.
Okay. So why does it say that you don't know? Why do you have a range?
Yeah, because you don't know where the placements.
You don't know where the placement's gonna be, you don't know if you'll have the option of ride sharing within the district, you don't know if you'll have the option of ride sharing outside of the district. Our 7 in-district buses are 7 in-district buses dedicated to Timberlane. We may not have a bus dedicated to Timberlane that one of our students rides on if they ride share with another district. Or one of our out-of-district buses may ride share with another district as well. So in terms of how many buses are we utilizing, how many rides are we providing, it's not, the seven in-district buses, that's an easy, tangible number.
But to Kim's question, I think she said, you know, is it, are there, how many kids, are you asking about how many kids are on those buses sometimes?
No, I got I had my question answered. No.
Oh, so she's all set with that?
Yeah, I'm all set with that.
Okay. So this is a summary sheet you prepared for us, so this is off, these numbers are off this contract with the bus company.
Correct.
Okay.
And this is not, and that's why when the question was asked earlier, when we look at the object code for regular education and we look at the object code for special transportation, these numbers do not sum to the numbers that you see on the object report, because, for example, regular education ESY, right? Well, that's really special education, but we're using a regular education bus for that purpose. So that falls in that object code.
Okay. So this number, is that the number you carried for the proposed budget?
It's about 595,000 combined, and that's probably a better way to look at it, 595 combined, looking at about 581 based on best knowledge, based on the bids that we have in front of us.
Right, but that's the number you put in the proposed budget.
595 in the proposed budget.
And it's not in the
Operating
default.
budget, it's not in the default. Neither for the special transportation, which we do have a contract for, which we do know, but those increases will be, or
Or
the regular education that we were just discussing.
Okay. My question. Anyone else have any questions about that?
No, but I think this is pertinent to the next discussion about special education.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
What a great segue.
Perfect.
Are we ready to, should Mr. Geary be here? Are we ready to move on to special education?
Mr. Geary, I think you're, yeah, I think you're probably,
Thank you, Mr. Gary.
thank you, I
Thank
think
you.
you're all
Thanks,
set.
Tom.
Thanks.
And one last thing before we do leave transportation, and it doesn't involve Mr. Geary at all, but from a numbers perspective, Kim, I'm sure, Dr. Fair, I'm sure you've thought of this already. But having 29 buses out of a bus yard, right? We have the same support, same power, same electricity, we have the same person or people working there. Adding 9 buses to that doesn't increase that overhead. And so even though Hampstead may be 25% of the district, you're really cutting your overhead by a third. You're being able to spread that overhead out by a third. Now, that said, how much overhead is part of that daily rate? How much is part of that whole thing? Labor's a killer. These labor factors don't really jive. But I'll put that out there for consideration that there are some economies of scale in that regard.
Okay. Great.
If we're ready to move on to special education, I'll
Yes,
ask our
we are.
Director of Special Education.
This is a non-pub, right?
Well, let's see how far we can get. Let's see how far we can get.
Oh, sorry, it's going by the agenda.
Well,
Yeah,
it may have to go.
it may have to be, yeah. We'll have to see how far we can take this in public. The goal, I'd like to keep the whole thing in public, but obviously, whatever's gotta be non-public, it's gotta be non-public.
What's the director's advice?
I think, we're very conscious, we're all very conscious of the FERPA, Federal Education Rights. So the questions that you need answers to can only be so specific in public, and I'll let you know what I'm comfortable and not comfortable sharing. And then maybe we can go from there, if that sounds fine with people.
Great. Yeah, so, yeah, because I think, obviously, this is all about budget versus students, towns, and names of schools.
Right.
When I look at this budget process, how we got here, and there was this proposed budget, is a default budget. I've been told that there is 9.3 million put in the default currently right now. Correct. There is 9.7 and change in the current proposed budget. I understand there's now new information putting up to 10.1. And then, well, the budget committee was going back and forth. They had their, I think their initial, whatever their initial budget was, and then they asked, there was a process where a number was thrown out there, and then they asked the administration, well, show us what this would look like if you, I think that was their version 2 of the budget. And there was a few different numbers of special ed. So there was are you familiar with what I'm talking about? What happened was there was initially a proposed budget, I think of 75 million. And then that was where the budget committee turned to the administration and said, show us a number of a lot less. And then monies were spread. I said spread, decreases were spread. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I believe what happened at that meeting, because it was a budget committee meeting, not a school board meeting, that's what affects your department. Special ed was dropped by maybe $500,000.
It was.
And Julie Hammond of Atkinson said, well, how are you going to do that if this is all a requirement? And I believe, Jeff, your response was like, well, we'll have to find the money. And I might be summarizing my comments. So where my confusion is I, over a period of 3 or 4 months, have heard at least 4 different special ed numbers. And I'm trying to,
Reconcile?
Trying to understand that. And
yeah, I'm trying to understand what's going on, because this isn't over 4 years, this is over 3 or 4 months.
Right, and I can kind of give you a big picture about how that works. Because this is the 5th budget I believe I've developed, and it is, as I've said, like a moving target. I'm going to give you some kind of overall trends and numbers, and then tell you what's transpired since I developed our proposed budget. And then you can,
Okay.
that would help.
I would check, I believe my comments were that it did not meet our legal obligations. The number that had been proposed, taking $500,000 out, did not meet our legal obligations under special education at that time, second draft of the
It
budget.
was
I believe.
draft 2, and then
Draft two.
$500,000 was put back in, so that was up to 9.733. The proposed budget is at 9.733. Your new draft of the default is now at 10.1.
Actually, I think it's a 10.274.
Okay, 10.274, okay. So, I understand these numbers are varying. I guess I'm very perplexed as to why, when we knew that the number at the public hearing was up to 10.274, that no one on the budget committee was made aware of it when that was a public hearing, and they could have actually adjusted that number after the public hearing.
We didn't discuss that after the hearing, Kim. I mean, I wasn't watching that part of the meeting, but they didn't discuss it after we walked away and cleared the
No,
floor.
but it should have been discussed in the
Well-
proposed budget
Yeah.
That's what I mean,
during
they
that,
didn't
that
discuss
meeting.
it.
No, it was not discussed at
Yeah,
all.
so, but that's the second question, but which is your
Sorry.
starting answer. My first question is, which, I guess if you can give us what's happened here in the last 3 or 4 months here.
I can. Since I developed the budget in September, we've had 2 placements in 2017 and 2, one pending and 1 placement in 2018. With another information I got from Massachusetts that there could be another one. So we would say 3 in 2018 possibly, and 2 in 2017, since I developed the budget. So special education is a living, breathing process, and it changes, as I've said, daily. We've always tried our best to try to anticipate some things, but it's difficult, and to show you why it might be difficult, I went back to 2016, the fall of 16. We had 2 students move in the district who were already in placement. In 2017, we had 2 students move in who were already in placement. And in 2018, we have a possible placement, possible residential placement that we've been apprised of that would come to this district. So that's when we talk about trends, try to look at that. And it's very hard to figure out what you should put in a budget and not put in a budget, but we try to be very responsible about that. But the numbers are going up. In 2016, we placed 5 students. That's more than we've ever placed in a year since I've been here. So, you know, I'm really looking at those trends, but to answer your question specifically, really 5 placements since I developed the budget, either are actively already placed or actively being placed or anticipated. And then that ties right into the specialized transportation piece, because those placements require transportation. Since some of them we don't know yet where they will be placed, we don't know if we'll have to they'll be available for a shared ride or it'll be a single ride. So we try to keep it within 30 miles of the district. Sometimes that's not possible. So, you know, that's why there's a lot of unknowns there.
So when I look at, you calling them placements, because obviously you're the expert in this. Is this what I was looking at the other day that ranges from $40,000 up to maybe $120,000 per student? Is that
Yes,
a
or
placement?
more, in excess of 120. Yes.
What's the max?
Depends on whether it's a day placement or a residential placement. As we've said before, residential placements could be in the neighborhood of 200,000 or more. About 4 years ago, I had one that was $296,000. But a day placement is typically about, I think 130 is probably the top, 135 is probably the top for a day placement right now.
Okay, so, again, you can sense, well, my frustration that basically, of all the things in the district, we're dealing with this moving target, which is a lot of money. To Kim's point, and however that number came up, the 9.7 that's in the current proposed budget, that number is $400,000 to $500,000 short, is what we're hearing, is what you're
So the
saying
9
tonight.
million is for placements, for the out-of-district placements, not the transportation. 9.7
Talking about
is
just overall
That's the-
special ed.
That's the entire 1,200.
That's the entire
That's
thing.
everything?
No, that does
No.
not include transportation.
include
Does not
transportation.
include
Transportation's a separate
So
line.
this is just the placements.
This is just the placements.
Correct, and that's why,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is, the 9.7 is the total of the 1,200 function. The special transportation's not in that function, so it's not all of special ed. It's
Right.
really, that's why it's special ed, we're talking about transportation, special education, 1,200. So right now, we're at about 2.23, where we perhaps would have 2.5 million in that line.
I'm sorry, which line?
What are you referring to?
Sorry, in the 1,200 function
Tuition?
I guess, Jeff,
line,
I guess.
object 564 and 569.
Yeah, private tuition
Hmm?
and other tuition.
Okay, but what must be also, that must be part of the increase from 9.7 to 10.2 in the latest draft you gave us last week.
So 10.2 is the, 10.2 is the 1,200 function budget, and in that, I rolled forward pursuant to the statute on, for example, the first line, administrative salaries, and I did include, as I rolled things forward, I did include the addition of those funds in that 564 object line. Now, and the increases in that 1,200 line in the document that I provided or default were 120 and 126 respectively between teacher and educational assistant salary increases, 937,000 for private tuitions, for a total of 1.84, taking the $9,090,000 18 budget to $10,274,000.
I know, but I guess my question still pertains to the proposed operating budget in regards to that number.
Yep.
Why is the budget committee not aware of that number?
That's a very good question. And when they approved their budget, they approved their budget based on the best numbers that we had at the time.
Correct.
They do
But
not have the flexibility from a legal perspective. It gets very, very dicey to be increasing the budget so late in the public hearing process. And I have some concerns about that because we do have an opportunity at deliberative to have that matter addressed without question. But the meeting that we had, I believe, was the last day, really, we could have a public hearing on that. And if that budget was adjusted up or down and there was some complaint about it or it was not done correctly, we would be in a pretty bad state. They had accepted their budget at that point.
But was this mentioned to them when they had their meeting after the public hearing?
No. Because they're not typically concerned with the default budget. That was a number that I had produced, at the time for this committee.
I know, but they're directly concerned with the proposed operating budget, and this is clearly something that, I hope they're aware of it now. Frankly, if I were a budget committee member,
Mhm.
I'd really kind of want to know that before I get to the deliberative
Mhm.
hearing. Just
This
so
is-
I'd all of a sudden be told that now my proposed budget, anyway.
This is
I
not-
think we might want to.
It's not that unusual. The 17-18 budgeted number will be overspent considerably in that line. She budgeted what she thought she needed at the time, and then things happen, and sometimes you end up spending more in a line. And that's gonna happen this year, right now in special ed. We've already spent the special ed budget for 17-18.
I know,
It's
right?
February 1st,
And we still have kids we need to place.
and we still have kids we're gonna be placing.
so-
That number's gonna go way over. When you look at the end of the year, what was spent and what was budgeted, you're gonna see a delta, probably similar to the delta we're talking right now, between 9.7 and 10.2. That's what you're gonna see.
I'm not disputing.
Okay, again,
Well, I mean, we're making it sound like it's some unusual thing. It happens all the
No, I'm
time.
No,
not
no,
saying
no.
it's unusual.
no, I think the point that Kim's trying to make here, which has been, and I think I might have mentioned to you walking in the meeting a couple weeks ago, that we're experiencing this public outcry about special ed and funding. And then we collectively went to 2 public meetings. Don't mention it.
I
And-
will tell you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Boyle. I will tell you that 2 of these placements have come about since the hearings. I mean,
Okay,
Since the budget was.
all right.
I mean,
So-
if you were on the budget committee and you heard me say, we don't have enough in the default budget for, we're mentioning a number that's greater than 9.7, I mean, it's out there. They know that they only budgeted 9.7, and we were talking 9.9 at the time, and now we're talking 10.2. They were well aware. There isn't, I mean, unless they're not paying attention, everybody on that budget committee knew that 9.7 wasn't
No,
gonna.
we didn't have the discussion publicly about, this is the first public discussion that we've had about the 10-2.
About the 10.2, but 9.9's greater than 9.7.
Why are we spinning our wheels about it?
That's $200,000 right there.
I guess we're looking at 10-2.
I think public, if
Kind of
there's
a
a,
moot point, you know.
It's kind of a moot point, but, and hopefully the budget committee's paying attention, so.
Yeah, so again, to me, obviously, as you mentioned, whether it's special ed or actually anything, at the deliberative session, the members of the budget committee, members of the public can raise an operating budget up to 10%. So that's $7 million.
I have a question for you folks, and you can please tell me if I'm out of line. I've heard that that the SORESC membership could be on the line as far as being cut from the budget or looked at. And I would just tell you that for special education, that would be devastating.
No, that was removed? because there was a talk that Ceres was not going to continue, but obviously that was not gonna be, that wasn't cut to just cut it. It was because there was talk that organization would
Well, they're
cease to.
still-
Thank
But
you
it
for
was-
clarifying, because I know,
Yes.
we've talked about it, and I know you understand that we have a great relationship with them, and they are providing with us some specialized people in vision, hearing, and feeding and swallowing, that if we did not have Ceres, we would literally not be providing services. Even if you gave me 4 and 5 times the cost per hour, there would not be the people to hire. So I don't think anybody wants to be in that situation where there'd be people in the district up in arms that their children were now being deprived. We don't want to get in that situation. So I feel it's also my duty to let you guys know that it is a critical component to our programming in this district. And it has nothing to do with anything except the best service and most appropriate service for our students. So.
And that membership provides discounted rates on services,
Well, it
but
provides us, as being a member, we get the first dibs, if you will, of those people. If we were to pull out, those people would pull out and go to another member district who is now in line saying, as soon as you have a vision person, I need that person. I currently have two, I want to say this in public session, I have students who
Specialists.
I have not been able to cover services even with membership in Ceresc, and that really concerns me. So
Yeah, that's,
I just want to make sure you are well aware of that.
sure.
So there's 5 members, which gives us a priority place in line with some of the big districts.
Okay. Okay. Anyone have any other special ed questions while we have?
So I'd just like to be clear. So the school board has a proposed default of 2.234 million for private tuition. So are you saying that even that number is not sufficient? What are we saying here? So what I'm trying to understand is, what do you want for tuition? What do you want for transportation?
In the,
Broken down.
in the
Right.
default, so what you're asking?
Yeah.
No, we did, it's currently at 1.642.
that's the old one.
Yes, that's ours.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
642
Right.
in the
That's
default
Day. This
for
is-
tuition,
correct.
replacements, that's what it is.
So your number now is what?
Because it was 2 point, yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
What is
I
the
just wanna
number?
know.
Yep. What is the number now? for-
Object code 564, 2579, 2,579,202.
2.579. So
579 what?
2,579,202.
900,000, just rough numbers.
But what's currently in the proposed operating budget is 2.234, correct?
It's probably not enough either, but
Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Approximately, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now what about sped transportation? What line is that?
It's a
519.
2,700 line.
2721 519.
Oh, yeah, okay. So what should be those numbers?
You had earlier proposed 1175001.
27, 21. One 1175, that's what I proposed. 1175. Showing 1193, but there's a bit of a shift between the two functions, and collectively, the 2700 object code for those two lines should show an increase of 581,874.
581, oh, that's the number you gave us.
That's
Correct.
between the two.
Right.
Correct.
581, 874.
Correct. Over previous year's budget.
But over the current operating budget is what I want to know. The current proposed operating budget.
I believe that's 14,000 less than the current operating budget based on the most recent figures. The total increase in those two lines, I believe, is 595,000 in the operating budget.
Okay, but,
In the default, it isn't.
581, well, that's the number we would need now.
so I guess I'm still trying to understand. There's almost a $600,000 delta in transportation, and all we're looking at is 2 extra out-of-district students?
Well, that's transportation versus the placements. Getting them there.
But I feel like I'm not understanding something. Didn't I understand it's like 581,000 more we're asking for?
No, that's the difference in transportation,
Whole
Be-
transportation.
regular ed and special ed. Regular,
Oh,
regular
oh.
transportation is
Okay.
around,
It's combined in one line.
Okay, okay, fine. So what is it just for sped? That's all I want, the sped transportation number.
72?
272, 280, if you look at his chart.
It would be a little bit more than that if you include the ESY that's under the regular education
Oh,
line.
yeah.
Okay, so what is that? So I just want a number.
272 plus 40,000 more,
A little over 300, Jeff?
about 300.
310, somewhere around there?
No, it's a little less in special ed. It would be a little less than that, I think.
So, okay, so we're looking at
275, I would say.
275.
275, okay. So we've got, we're looking at an increase of $275,000 for 2 more out-of-district students.
But this is measured,
I heard her say 5.
this is measured from the 17-18 budget, which was developed, which we've added 2
five.
5.
since
2,
budget
September.
meetings, 2
Two
additional
since-
in that, and then you had additional after the budget was assembled for the 17-18 year.
Yep, 5 total.
okay.
5 total.
So, because what I heard is we had 2 new people for the 2017 year.
For the 2018. In
17.
2 more in 18.
In 2018, there have been 2 placements. In fall of 2017, there were 2 placements.
Okay, so that's
One
during the
pending for 2018, so that would make
5.
2018 starting January 1st, so not to be confused like the next year, 2018. As of January 2018, 2 placements and 1 pending.
Okay.
One possible, that we've got notification of.
So that is within the current year's operating budget
Yes.
that you
No.
did not
No.
anticipate?
No, because we are looking at the budget year for 17-18.
Right.
Oh, she's asking the question,
No.
right? We didn't anticipate these 5, these are new
Right.
placements that we did not budget
Placements.
for. That's what you're asking.
Got to
Right.
place them in
So
the
they weren't
next
budgeted
go-round.
for the next year, that's correct. Sorry. to be
They're not
confusing.
included in the-
They're not included in the,
17-18.
In the 18-19.
18-19
proposed,
Or the 17-18.
Or the
Right.
default.
right.
And that was what the point I was trying to make earlier. It's not unusual. We had a budgeted number, that number will get overspent in that line a lot because of the unknowns.
Right.
That's what we were saying. It happens every year. So
Right.
for you to say we needed 9.7 when we asked you, and now it's more than that, is,
Right.
if we ask her in 5 months, it might be 10.5, right?
Maybe.
We hope not, but it might be.
I could have 2 kids come back. I don't know. And then it's like, okay. we don't have the 3, it'll be now 2, you know, so it's always in, out, in, out. But I cannot count on the coming back ins, but I'm pretty sure of the outs.
Okay, so I'm just trying, 5 additional students cost $275,000 in just transportation.
Because it's 65,000 a bus.
Yeah.
That's the worst-case scenario.
Right.
If they all went to different schools and needed
And they
individual
couldn't
rides.
share.
But we also have to factor in,
But you've got to plan that.
No.
You've got to have the worst-case
You-
possibility.
you also have to factor in your monitors.
Right, right,
Then your ESY implications.
right.
But the monitors aren't included in that line item, though, are they?
Yeah,
There.
they're down
They
there.
are?
They're-
The
yeah,
monitors are in there?
And up at the, yeah.
And I mean, for 5 students, that really is probably,
That's more than
One-
the cost of a bus. So,
So
Okay.
I'm hearing 275 there and
Okay,
937 in placements.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty?
Yep.
So, okay. Do here, people. There's 3 people here. I think, I think I'm good with special ed.
So we're not proposing anything, or we are going to propose
So
something?
that's what I'm talking, yeah, that's, could you?
Oh.
I'm just
Pass
gonna-
these down?
Yeah, please, grab one and pass it down, to get one to the super, please.
Thanks, Brian.
And, you already have one, Bill? Peter and
Have what?
Donna. I'm gonna read something. Okay, because now this is, look,
We're all set.
we're all set
Thank
with
you
you,
very
thank you
much.
very much. Thank you very much.
I'm sure we'll
So
need
what are we
Mr.
going on
Dowd
to
to
now?
stay.
You know, okay, so here's, so this
I
is,
think we're moving to the default budget now,
yeah,
aren't we?
so this is, that's correct. So what I asked the people to come in front of us here tonight to talk about transportation and special ed. This seems to be the hot topics here that really are being challenged, if you will, on the default, okay? Now, what I've just handed out for people watching at home is, a year ago, just funny how this, interesting how this happened. One of our board members challenged the district about the calculation of a default budget and how it came about, and the district won the case. So what I have, and I'm gonna read part of this here tonight, because as we know, we've received, well, I've received 4 different legal opinions on this subject matter. And I want to be clear that there was only 2 written legal opinions, so, because 2 came from one firm, there were 2 lawyers, and then 1 was our own attorney. So 4 people have weighed in on this. But as I want to share with the board here, as we attempt to address what we've heard tonight, transportation and special ed. So this is a ruling from a Judge Andrew Schulman from Rockingham County Court. So there has been a lot of discussion about the default budget versus the operating budget. So I'm just going to read aloud, so bear with me a little bit here, because I'm not going to read the whole case, but this is very relevant before we make some kind of a vote. In contrast to the operating budget, the default budget is just a bottom line number.
Where is this? Sorry.
Page
Oh, I'm
three.
sorry, page 3. Page 3. So you can, I'm going to read, but this is, a lot of this stuff is not relevant to our conversation, but this is, I think is. CRSA 40:13, Roman numeral 9B, defining the term default budget as an amount. This amount is defined by statute as equal to the amount of the previous year's budget as reduced or increased by debt service, contracts, and other obligations previously incurred, and costs mandated by law, and B, reduced by one-time expenditures in the previous year's budget. i.e., thus the default budget is determined not by policy, but rather by application of statutorily mandated accounting principles. If the voters reject the proposed operating budget, and if alternative operating budget is not subsequently approved at the special meeting, then the default budget will be automatically enacted. Then they refer to a case, Sullivan versus Town of Hampton Board of Selectmen. It goes on to the RSA, calling out the default budget definition. Legislature amended RSA 40:13 in 2004 to provide for default budget. If the voters fail to adopt a proposed operating budget, the default budget is calculated as the year's prior budget, adjusted up or down by other obligations, reduced by one-time expenditures. If voters fail to adopt the proposed operating budget, they are either deemed to have approved the default budget, or the governing body may choose a special town meeting to plan and submit a revised operating budget. Although the default budget is a bottom line number, RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 11, requires the school board and the governing bodies of all municipalities the use of the official ballot process to say something how that number was calculated. More particularly, the statute mandates the governing body shall complete a default budget form created by the Department of Revenue and Administration to demonstrate how the default budget was calculated. The form and associated calculations shall at a minimum include the following: appropriations contained in the previous operating budget, reductions and increases to the previous year's operating budget, and one-time expenditures as defined in subparagraph Roman numeral 9B. The Department of Revenue's default budget form is known as the MS-DS. This form does not require school boards to show their work down to the function object level code. Instead, the line items required by the form consist of highly abstract aggregations of function codes. Now, this is to Timberlane. For example, the first two, this is last year's case. For example, the first two lines on the MSDS form are for regular programs and special programs. In the case of the school district's default budget for 2017-2018, these line items were for $19 million and $9 million respectively, out of a default budget of $68 million. For each of these items, the MSDS form requires school boards to note the total, quote, reduction or increase from the previous year as well as previous one-time appropriations. The lack of greater specificity in the line items for the default is understandable, because if the default budget is approved, the school board may then immediately relocate funds from one line to another. RSA:10, C. Sullivan, must be a case 156, New Hampshire, at clearly case 693, 694. Put another way, the default budget is not a sorcerer's apprentice that ensures that all of the previous year's programs continue with identical funding. Rather, is a single appropriation that can be allocated in the manner chosen by the school board. The MSDS form has signature lines for all members of the school board. The form asks each school board member to certify, under penalties of perjury, that the member has examined the information contained in this form and believes it to the best of the member's belief true and accurate. In this case, Mrs. Green dissented from the school board's disclosure of 2017 default budget. Therefore, she refused to sign the form. Nonetheless, the school board as a whole approved the default budget as was disclosed to the voters. So, I read that and share that with you people tonight as we're about to make a vote. The default budget, as I've been saying all along, is a bottom line. So, when people get wrapped around the axle about saying, well, you don't have enough money for special ed, you don't have enough transportation. The current default budget sits at $71,370. Okay? Now, this board can go back and forth if that's adequate, the rationale. But as we progress to this next step, I just want to make sure to see, this really said nothing any different than Attorney O'Shaughnessy or Sewell Kidder. It just happened to spell it out. You know, well, in my world, a judge's decision has more weight than even a legal opinion. As far as I know, and no one has brought up anything, that we haven't done anything against any legal opinion. I've had several conversations with Attorney O'Shaughnessy. And tonight, I asked, and I thank you for the people who came and gave us the information that I personally so desperately needed, about added information. This board, I understand it was a 5-4 vote. It's still a school board vote. A lot of votes is 5-4 votes. That's okay. One of the reasons you can, actually the main reason, that you open up a additional discussion for default budget is new information. This board did not have clearly information on special ed. Dr. Farah, I think, did a great job of taking last year's numbers and adding contractual with the information she had. That's how she came up with the 9.3. We just spent a half an hour to an hour with our special ed director, so we know that the special ed number that number by itself seems to be a moving target. So there was a little bit of a frustration when you're coming in. She's doing her job, and when you go over a budget on certain things, then it's up to the administration now to find money in other areas, because of course you have to fund special ed, and nobody knows, as we just heard a very nice presentation, no one knows exactly what that number is. So it was a little frustrating for myself as a school board chair to deal with this number, and until tonight, not knowing how this even occurred. So I can get my hands around special ed a little better. It apparently, to me, the bus transportation contract, the difference between the proposed budget and default budget is between $500,000 and $600,000?
581,874.
Okay. So, when Kim prepared the MS DS form, currently, there is 500,000 in capital, correct? Does that sound right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So, and that's really not really probably never should have been put there to start with, because it's really not a true default budget item. And as I just read aloud, it's a bottom line budget. My suggestion is I look at the 500 in capital. If that can offset what no matter what happens, we know the Timberlane transportation contract's going up, and it's going to be in that $500,000 range. Whether we can work something out with Hampstead, we know that number's going up. And then that leaves you now with is it 900 to $1 million? What is the number in special ed?
937,200.
937,200. Okay, so as I look at this fall budget, and again, looking at it from its total, because I'm gonna see if I'm gonna try to get the board on a number, because it all gets down to a bottom line number. Our current proposed budget is 71 750,
759.
759. Okay, and and we are currently at 71,370. That's in there?
Correct.
Okay, and that difference is what?
390,000.
390,000. Well, I will entertain a motion to raise the default budget by $400,000.
Hold on. You forgot the Saresk.
It's a total. Fitzarest is 15,000, I think.
So, if I may,
Please.
well, actually, did you make a motion?
I made a motion to,
Can you repeat
sorry.
that motion, please?
I made a motion to raise the default budget by $400,000, which would put it above the proposed budget.
Right, but, can I?
Okay.
Oh, no, I mean,
Seeing no one's at second my motion, please, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I butted in.
No, that's.
That was that 500, and it was done with the best interest in mind of capital, but
It was.
is that moved, are you moving that? That's not part of the motion, you're just moving
No.
that to the transportation line?
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, that's a different motion, I guess, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
So you're saying add 400, or nobody's seconded yet, so I guess we gotta wait.
Okay. All righty. No one a second. All right. Peter?
In that case, I'd like to make a motion. And that is to, based on what we've learned from special ed and transportation tonight, to increase the default budget to $72,889,630. Because when we talk about changing some of these, reallocating some of these costs that you were mentioning, that doesn't actually come out of that RSA. It doesn't allow us to do that.
Okay.
So what's the number?
It does allow you to do that. So if you want to debate the judge,
72,889,630.
give me any clearer. The judge, that's why I read it, so.
And
by
I'm
the way,
just reading.
It's online.
And that's it was an interpretation of something specific on reporting to them. The RSA, the judge also says the RSA says how to calculate it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using that calculation.
Okay. That's your, okay.
No, it's not mine. It's the RSA's, Brian.
That's how you interpret it, yeah.
No, it's how I read it.
Okay.
It's plain black and white.
Okay.
But
So
nonetheless.
what's your number again,
Okay.
because you still haven't got a second.
72,889,630.
889, 630.
What's that
What we've
increase
got
it?
now, yeah, we've got 7137, right? 370 and some change. So you're
I
adding.
guess I'm not even looking at that number. So I don't-
71,370, 606.
Yeah, 606. So you're adding, again, rough cut numbers, $1 million,
$1,000,001, I guess.
$1,000,001.
I'm adding
What's your
exact
number? 72 what?
I'm getting.
72,889,630.
He's adding up
Million.
1.5
Yeah,
million.
1519074 is what,
And that is
Those two
only
numbers.
adding in,
Yeah.
getting to the same special ed number that Jeff presented and the transportation numbers we were given.
I think if you were to take the 71,370,606 and add the 1,519,074, you would be at 72,889,680.
Did I miss that?
It's like $30. It's not a big deal.
It's $30.
Not a concern. But to make sure that the numbers tie out, that we're talking about the same numbers.
Ay.
Yeah.
Okay, Peter has a motion on the floor.
I'll second that.
Kim?
I can't support that motion. I've looked at 15 years of historical data, looking at the default and the proposed operating budget. There's never been a difference of more than, to the exact number, $775,000 difference between those two budgets. I do not know how you could go and support a default budget that is $1.5 million more than the proposed operating budget. I certainly could not support that. I could certainly not sign that. I'm not done. I can tell you right now that the difference between last year's operating budget and the proposed budget, if you remove the capital, was $130,000. The year before, the difference was about $50,000.
in the default use
In, the
comparison?
difference between your proposed and your default budgets.
Get upset, just,
No,
I'm trying to clarify the
I'm just saying,
information.
some years they're higher, some
Right.
years they're lower.
Right.
The last 3 years they've been higher. Before that, they were lower for 3 years, then they were higher. It doesn't, you can't always say, you know, even though we're declining enrollment, that the default's gonna be higher, because that also doesn't work.
Okay, Peter?
Okay. So I want to read the RSA again, and I'd like Kim to tell me where it says anything about this year's proposed budget.
You don't need to read it,
This
Peter.
amount
It
is
says
defined by.
nothing. It says nothing, I can tell you. It
Okay.
says nothing.
So you just stated you wouldn't vote in favor of it because of something that has nothing to do with the RSA.
Oh, it certainly does have something to do with how the
Okay.
default budget has been constructed over the last 15 years.
Well, I think.
Show me where it talks about old default budgets as well. I'm missing that.
You have to use this historical data.
You don't have to use the historical data at all. I'm just giving you my opinion. It's not an argument.
Okay,
It's
I'm just-
And I
this is
think
my
at this
opinion.
stage, I think everyone on this board's probably read this RSA no less than 24 times. And again, I will just, which I know is not tied to the default budget, but right now, this district is operating on a spend rate of approximately $69 million, whether it falls between 69 and 70 million. That's right now without doing, and that's what we're spending right now. So,
Placements.
Yeah, except for the extra
Except for the
stuff.
placements.
no, but I think the intent is, see, this is what the confusion keeps getting back to. The default budget is supposed to be, if the people can't pass anything, to keep the district running. As the judge, doesn't have to keep the district running with everything you're used to right now, to keep this district running. That's all the default budget's really supposed to do. Really, what should be happening is if special ed and transportation is grossly underfunded, the people should know about that at the deliberative. That's really where it belongs. That's historically where it belongs. So this is going to be the first time that the voters have learned, usually at the town level, it's usually your salt and sand budget goes up, and new information happens within that 2 weeks of a town meeting. I believe the voters in this community, that's who put us here. We work for them, and they take over their meeting at the deliberative. I think they've done pretty well over the years. I fully expect this type of conversation doesn't have to come from the school board to bring this to their attention. There's nothing wrong with their hearing. So the default budget is not supposed to be a budgeting tool to make sure that we need more money than a proposed budget. That's really not what it's for. So, I mean, it's been beaten up pretty well. So obviously, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of us here tonight. So wherever at least 4 of these people are going here tonight is where this number's going. That's really the long and short of it. We can sit back and debate it till the cows come home. So as far as I'm concerned, I think we're all passionate about our thoughts on this thing. I do believe that everyone's intentions are positive. I think everyone's here representing their constituents, their communities, and the district. So let's see where this goes. So right now, Mr. Beal, you have a motion on the floor for, what's the number?
I just moved away
The
from.
total is at 71,
72,889.
630.
72,
889 630.
okay. Any further discussion before we take that to a vote? All those in favor of 72,889,630? Opposed? Fails.
Can we go back to your suggestion, Brian, of the 400? Can we talk about that one again? I'd
Sure.
like to see if we could come up with some kind of a compromise.
That's what I tried to do.
Have us walk into the deliberative, and perhaps at the deliberative, our constituents will raise the proposed budget. But we need to make sure our obligations are covered. From what we heard tonight, we need to add some money into that default to make sure we're covering those special ed situations, at least some of it. So
And I respect that, Sue, but again,
they can't change the default, only us.
okay, no, they can't change the default, but right now, you have 71,370 to cover everything. So I understand, that as a superintendent, we've had several conversations, he said, whether public and private, of course, it's easier for him if he has 72.8, 73.5 to do things. Am I confident that 71.4, he could make this happen? Yes. I, as you, Mr. I am trying to go to a number that, and respect also our other board, that they came up with 71,759. I'm going up above the number. I personally want to be in striking distance of them, and then we take this to the floor. But I just, that's my thought process, Sue.
My thing is, if we don't make some compromise here, it's not supporting what I think the district will do at the deliberative session. I wanna get closer together.
I find this hard to believe that I've never seen that happen, where you bring something up of this magnitude and the voters turn that down. I don't buy that for 1 second.
But the people in the polling booth aren't necessarily the people that are at deliberative.
Okay, that's a good point. Kelly?
I just want to ask a quick question. The proposed budget that Kim did up so well for us, that everything that's contained in that is all stuff that's, whether it's contracts or stuff that's we're using currently, money that's being,
Well, it's money that's being used. There's about $325,000 in that default budget that does not appear in the proposed budget, which is non-contractual.
okay, so, but everything in there is stuff that's contracted for,
No,
no?
no. I think contractual obligations, Mr. Dowd, what are our contractual obligations out of the total percent of the budget? I think you usually speak to that at the budget committee hearing.
Yeah,
50 million?
70% of the budget?
Yeah, perhaps, yeah.
So the contractual obligations are about 50 million,
About 50 million?
Mhm.
So the rest of that is just for,
non-contractual.
it's stuff that we're spending money on, we would be spending money on in the foreseeable future?
Yeah, it's operating costs. You're
That's
running-
what
yeah.
you're saying, you
Yeah.
take a lump sum and you put it together and
Right.
that's what you're gonna spend?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you like, right now, you're, this year, you're at 69, so if we've heard this a few times, so if you go from 67 to 69 to 71, maybe you go 71.5, that doesn't leave you any extra money for surplus, and that's, again, my thoughts are, I'm not trying to budget surplus in a default budget.
No, I understand what you're
This is, I want to keep the doors open, and 99% of what happens around here keeps happening. Yes, I'm glad, I mean, he did it, he worded it better than I could do, that, as Judge pointed, there's no magic to it, that basically, this is not a sorcerer's apprentice here, so, and I do agree with you, Mrs. Sherman, and that's what I am.
Well, the reason I'm asking this question, Brian, is because new information we got tonight about, if you're talking about taking the 500,000 and moving it over for the transportation,
Yeah.
and then that leaves us 937,200 for the special ed that we just found out about, that's in what we're using currently this year. This is what we're using now.
Yep.
Is quite a bit of money that's coming into it. I couldn't in good conscience not add at least the majority of that going forward so that we don't affect all the other services and the other things that are going on.
I
If in fact we.
understand, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I understand that, so you're closer to Peter's number, that's all. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all you're saying, that's fine, I get it, I respect that.
Need to find a compromise.
So, Mrs. Doobie, did you have a hand up or something?
Yes, I did. I just had a quick question. What was the total number that we spent as a district to run? What was that number
Last
from
year?
last year? Yeah.
June 67.2.
67.2.
That was the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2017.
67.2, and we're at 71.3, right?
You're 71.370.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, well, Sue, let's,
Even by my own projections, I don't think we'll be spending less than 70 this year. Just for the record, I keep hearing
Okay.
69, 69, 69. I can't see it.
Okay.
And the great news that we're continue to get doesn't seem to be pushing that below 70.
that's fine.
Let's propose 400 again.
So, Sue, you're at,
I'm trying to make a point.
yeah, So-
Compromise of, I don't know, we can come up with.
390. So let's go, you're at 390. I'll go 500. So you'll go, so it'd be up to 71,870.
Gonna add 500,000, I'll second it.
71.8, you said?
71,870.
71
500 even.
Yeah, 870, 60, whatever that is, and change.
And that's your motion, Brian?
That's my motion.
And I seconded it.
Sue's second. Peter?
I'm sorry, I've got to state this again, the judge, even the judge said, right after he quoted the RSA, default budget is determined not by policy, but rather by the application of statutory mandated accounting principles. And again, none of this has to do with horse trading or compromising or how close it was to the 2016-17 budget or how close it is to the budget committee's budget. I mean, I just can't.
Peter,
This
that's
just
great.
doesn't,
I know it doesn't make sense to you, and that's,
this doesn't
I
make
feel your
sense.
pain. That's why I couldn't begin to tell you the amount of hours I have with different lawyers on the subject matter. And not one said, Brian, I want to see that worksheet. And by the way,
No, you don't have to provide a
by the
worksheet to them,
way,
but
the
that's what
judge
we're
didn't ask for
talking
that
to.
worksheet either.
Yeah, he said at the end, they need a bottom line, but he says
So-
it's determined by statutory mandated accounting principles.
That's great.
And using that,
If you,
it's,
okay, Donna?
As I see it, the 500,000 in capital can be used for the special education, and we're under no legal obligation to fund a transportation contract that we don't have right now.
We do have a
disagree.
We
special
don't
ed
have it.
contract.
So, to
I
my
just-
mind, we're under no legal obligation to
That's-
fund a contract we don't currently have.
Well-
And so that's
Okay.
how I'm
That's your
justifying
opinion.
my vote, okay?
I agree with you, and I think
Okay.
I think legally, you're
I'm
correct.
correct.
I think
know.
legally you're correct. The reality is, we know that there's going to be
Contract.
29 buses
Yeah.
moving Timberlane kids around, and we know it's going to be about $500,000 more. So we can
I don't-
pretend it.
I don't know that at all.
Well, okay, well,
And
after what I heard tonight, I'm pretty confident that this is what's gonna happen. And by the way, I think it'd be fantastic if some magic genie came out of the sky and did it for, it's not gonna happen. So I think the wise decision here is to deal with the reality here. And so this is a number, and to me, and again, well, as you can see, we're all pretty passionate about our positions here. And I'm hoping we can come to some kind of a compromise here. So, with that being said, there's a motion on the floor and seconded. So the new number would be 71,870. Okay?
And
Change.
change it 606.
All right. That's again, all those in favor of that?
1, 2,
1, 2. Opposed?
2, 3, 4, 5.
Motion fails. We've gone from now one extreme to the other here, and again, the district, obviously, we'd have to do some serious campaigning here with the voters here, but
Ryan, if I could?
sure.
On your first point, maybe try to take care of the 500, maybe with a motion to move that into transportation, that 500 in capital.
Out of capital.
I don't disagree with making some adjustments here. I personally think that once the bottom line number is voted on and approved, that we turn it back over and to the business administrator to, well, somebody, it doesn't.
Just tell me where you want it. I can't put myself out there for this.
No.
Right, that's fine.
That's
can't.
fine,
Just tell me
that's
where you
fine,
want it.
if you want adjustments made. My concern about, technically, the 500 shouldn't be in capital. I know there was a discussion on the 21st as to why that was, because of the way these apportionments are made on EPV versus ADM. I'm not against moving it. It makes me a little nervous to deplete the capital budget to that extent, but by RSA, yes, you could do that. But I personally would not have a problem going to court and saying, I understand this is probably the way it should be, but you have to understand how this district is apportioned. So, I mean, when I think about trying to justify a budget, I think about how I'm gonna have to present it to somebody else in a court of law, if need be. So, I'm fine with moving it in the sense that technically it makes sense to move it. On the other hand, it concerns me that you're depleting the capital and there's no way to raise capital money once the budget, if this budget goes through, you can't move money from the other lines into the capital lines, so.
No, the spirit in which you did it obviously was a good spirit. Now, the way I see it, there's three issues. There's your capital issue, there's your transportation issue, there's your sped issue. So we'll still have a capital issue if you move it, but you'll at least take care of the transportation piece, and then you can debate special ed all night long, but at least you'll.
I think there's a fourth issue.
Oh.
And I will just, with the board here, that I believe, even though I know the RSA allows you to adjust the default with new information, I don't know if we have that door once we leave this room.
That's it, this is it.
No, you're right, you're right.
So,
This is
you're
it.
right.
So,
You can't do it on the floor.
so I don't, my brain tells me, if there's any room for movement, and, I think, thank you very much, Mrs. Sherman here, that, interesting how life is. We're in the middle, so, I'm trying to, as long as, with Mrs. Sherman here, I'm trying to get to some kind of middle ground, and I clearly understand both sides of this. I've lived this foolish thing for a month. So, and the sad reality is, I'm betting on it, that you're gonna see a operating budget go up $1.5 million, and that's what's gonna pass. So that's what I think's gonna
I
happen.
wish I had that much confidence.
Well, I do. I have a lot of confidence in the voters, so they've got it right pretty well, that's why we're all here. So I have
Right.
confidence in the voters.
Well then, can I make a motion?
Sure.
Can I make a motion to add 800,000
To the default,
to the default?
so it would make it 72, 170, is that what it makes it?
I think so.
What's the new number for them? Is it 72-1?
No,
Yes.
72,170, I have? Is that?
606.
606.
606? That was Kelly Ward motion, yeah.
71, what is that?
72,170. I added that correctly.
I hope so, that's what the record's showing.
Okay.
Well,
So you made a motion, a second to it?
Teach math.
did someone second it?
I'll second it.
Motion made second. All those in favor of the 72,170?
1, 2, 3.
3. Opposed?
Can we take a brief recess here?
Okay.
Just ask, just want to grab a cup of coffee.
Well, I think you can get a cup of coffee, but, you know, if you want to have a bathroom break, go ahead. We'll have a 5 or 10 minute bathroom break, you know?
I'm good.
Go out there on the parking lot, get some fresh air. You know, go look up at the stars, look for some divine guidance.
We already missed the big moon.
Are we in recess? Oh, no.
Yes, I asked for a 5-10 minute break. Yep.
Okay, yep, so we're off.
Welcome back. We had what a surprise. We had a longer than 5-minute break. We're not good at following schedule with anything in this thing, you know? So at any rate, welcome back. Let's see if we can, we're trying to revote a default budget here. So it's been 10 or 15 minutes, and let's see what people are right now. So I'm going to try this again. I would entertain a motion to raise the default budget by $500,000 even, which would go from 71,370 and change, whatever it is.
606.
Okay, thank you. 606.
370606?
37. I think right now it's 71,370.
Okay,
71.
got it.
Okay. And I want to add 500,000.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, you already made that motion and it was defeated.
Okay, I want to try it again.
No, you can't do that.
Why can't I?
Because it's been made once and it was defeated.
Well, there was no motion not to reconsider.
Add $1. Make it $500,001.
So I can, I was
It
just going
has
to say,
be
we can make it, I'll tell you what, thank you.
It has to be reconsidered by someone on the prevailing side.
Okay, so let me put a new
Add
motion.
$1 to it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna add $1, so we're gonna make it $500,001, and that's gonna put us over the top. I got a feeling, I'm good about this.
So, yeah.
Hey, this might be the move.
For this?
71870.
I'll second it.
I'll second. Okay, now we're at 71,
That was your motion, Brian, is that right?
that's correct, $500,001.
71,876,07.
71,
870-607.
okay. All those in favor?
1, 2,
I'll do
3,
it.
4, is that
The
a
extra
4?
buck.
Opposed?
The extra buck out of it.
Passes. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, adding 501,000, just to confirm the exact number, would bring the total to 71,870,607.
Yes.
That's correct.
Would that be correct? Perfect.
Yep. All right. Okay, thank you, okay.
Which makes the default budget higher than the proposed budget.
Correct. And I'll predict on the floor, you're gonna see that the proposed budget will be going up.
No, it won't.
Okay, all right,
It won't?
okay.
Okay.
Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I think besides the fact that you're not required to put a budget committee person. Anyone on the floor can make this happen. So I'm confident you'll see some movement on that. And then it's up to the voters. This is their meeting. So I will put my faith in the voters.
I'd like to make a motion that we strike we remove 5 administrative positions from the forthcoming academic year.
Point of order, this isn't on the agenda. And
Yeah, I don't think,
Has to do with the budget.
we just cleared the
From
budget.
the what? What was it?
From what budget?
From the what budget, Mrs. Green?
From the proposed budget. They're not in the proposed budget, but I want to remove the positions.
No, they are,
Two.
they are in the proposed budget. I need to correct you, they are.
Which ones are we talking about?
You know, I just
Okay.
wanted, but I still need to have.
This needs to be clarified. What positions are in the proposed budget? Exactly.
It's on the agenda.
Doesn't need to
First
be
of all-
clarified at all.
first of all, okay. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay.
But we're not even talking about this stuff on the
It's
agenda.
a point of order on that as well. And this is how your meetings get,
Yep.
Oh,
because you can't stay on budget, on topic.
Is Mrs. Belcher calling a point of order?
I'll
she said
call
there
a
was
point of
Thank
order.
you.
It's
She
not
asked
on
me.
the agenda.
She said there was
Okay.
one.
Off the rails.
Yes,
Okay.
Mrs. Green, thank you.
So,
Well, I'd like the
just-
superintendent to clarify, because as I understood, there were 5 administrator positions that were not filled and not budgeted in the proposed budget. That's different from this current year. Am I mistaken about that?
Not prepared to comment on that this evening.
There is a motion on the floor. That is not an acceptable answer, Mr. Chairman.
But that wasn't your
you-
That is a completely insubordinate answer.
I wouldn't call it an insubordinate answer, Donna, but it's, so your question is what's in the proposed budget?
Yes, I was under the impression that there were 5 administrative positions that were not budgeted in the proposed budget versus the current operating
Okay,
budget.
let me clear that up for
I
her.
don't know anything about
Point of
that.
order, this isn't even
I
on.
don't even know
Let me,
what
let me,
that-
I can clear it up pretty quickly.
Okay, let's.
It was a bottom line budget proposed, and draft 3 was not even considered by the budget committee. That'll be done by a newly elected school board.
Okay.
Once the budget gets approved and adopted, whether it's the default or the proposed.
And that's exactly why we have to make this motion now and carry it forward, for the sake of our budget going forward. If we want to see any surplus at all, we have got to take those positions out.
Oh, why don't you make it a deliberative?
Making it now, this is a board decision.
I don't understand how that would affect the surplus in this current
No.
year.
And how, we're gonna,
I'm gonna tell you this, let's do
It
this,
would
let's
protect the
have it,
surplus in
let's
the
let's
next
have a
year.
vote about it, because, you know what, they're not gonna talk about this for half an hour. It's not 10:30 at night. All those in favor of eliminating the, was it 5 administrative positions?
That are not funded currently in the proposed budget.
Well, we don't know that.
Well,
Yeah, that's not accurate.
can I just maybe try to clarify that a little?
Okay?
The budget was first proposed. In draft 2, there was a list of proposed cuts that had 8 administratives, 11.5 FTEs. In the third draft of the budget, the proposed budget had add-ins for certain positions and not for others. It appeared, and please don't, just wait till I'm finished, everybody, okay? It appeared that budget was still showing 5 administrative lines cut. However, the bottom line budget was voted on by the committee, not those specific cuts, correct?
Draft 3
So-
came out after the bottom line.
Oh, it came out after the bottom line.
Right.
So, and then basically the budget committee directed the superintendent and the business administrator to backfill the lines to come up with that number, correct? That's essentially what you did. You filled the
Right.
lines to come up with the budget numbers, budget committee's bottom line, correct? So,
It showed what a potential draft 3 could look like. Yeah.
but those numbers in draft 3, that sheet of paper is not necessarily what is now in the proposed budget, in terms of those specific cuts. I think that's where there's a little bit of a disconnect.
Depends how you look at
the
it.
question.
Okay, so,
Well, I will say, you have your district chief financial officer and business administrator here, and I'm prepared to talk about the default. And I really didn't come prepared to talk about, I wish I could help on
Okay.
that, and come prepared to
right,
talk about
and,
administrative
okay.
operating budget.
So, there's a motion on the floor, and seconded, has a brief discussion. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Abstentions? The motion fails.
Three,
You get the, did you get the count?
3 opposed, 2 abstentions.
Okay. All right,
Did I get that wrong?
so, it was,
So next
1,
year,
3,
when there's
2.
no surplus, you'll know why. You had your chance.
okay, thank you. Now,
Can I just clarify the vote? I'm a little confused. I know that Mrs. Green
1,
voted in
4.
favor.
She did, 1.
1 in
Yes.
favor, 4 against, Peter,
3.
Brian, Kelly and Sue, and Stephanie and Kim
Got it.
abstained.
Thank you. It was the abstentions I was lost. Thank
yeah.
you.
Okay. What I'd like to do is, if we can just do the policies in the next meeting, I don't know, there's nothing earth-shattering in the policies.
Policy's not.
And I think,
Yeah.
and administrator's report, I think requires some action here, so.
Yeah, would you, okay, do you want me to start with the action piece, the first, because I have them in a different order? Okay, well, no, I will.
Whatever, yeah.
Our model UN group at the high school had applied for in, I want to say late August, early September, to try to go to a conference in Boston. Trish Moore, who does an outstanding job with that group, and brought over a student leader with her to present to the SLT, because they were waitlisted on that trip. They couldn't, they were hoping to go, and they couldn't get in, and they were waitlisted. Well, some school, or a couple of schools, dropped out, and they found out several weeks ago that they were invited to actually attend this trip. So it's 9 students, and I know it's last minute because it's actually a week, they would leave a week from tomorrow to attend the Boston Invitational United Nations Conference, and that's February 9th through 11th. That's in Boston. The timing for this late request is due to the team being placed on the wait list back in October. The total cost to attend is $38,4370. However, the team has only raised about $1,200, a little bit more than that, and needs $26,36 to go. Team is asking for permission to attend, which they have, because they're not missing a school day. They're being dismissed later on that Friday afternoon. And they're looking for the funding, which is $26,36 that would be needed, and that would be where the board action would be needed.
2636.
Yep.
To take how many kids? 9?
No,
It's 9 students and a,
so okay, where do we get the money?
In the account that we would draw from the student activities account, I have $1,800 left for the rest of the year. So I can give them that $1,800, but then I have nothing to fund any more things. I'll have Destination Imagination, I'll have other groups that are be doing things, and that's what we have in the budget.
How much is in that for next year?
I don't have it in front of me, you might have it, if you have.
well, I know,
It's by the school.
I
We don't have it
can, I
at
can
that
speak
level.
to, well, he doesn't have that level, I can
Okay.
speak a little bit to this only because last year, the requests were coming in the spring and the budget was already done. We knew that student groups would come back this year to ask for money because he didn't have an opportunity to budget for them last year because the request came after the budget was finished. So this fall, he did budget for these, so this should be the,
We should be getting a little better.
this should be the end of
next year.
coming to the board.
Hopefully, a
for
little
tr-
better.
That's kind of where I'm going with this, that, every month someone comes up, they're all good causes, and
Yeah, traditionally, we've come a couple, 3 times during the year for things just like this, but I've never been without money to take me into the spring. And this year,
And as far as I'm concerned, I have no idea why the school board even has to weigh in on these things.
I agree.
If
But,
if
yeah, in the way I
your
look- I look
team
at it as-
says this is a good thing,
Yeah.
and it's budgeted, great.
I think, especially when we bring kids to you,
Well,
in a way, I look at it as a showcase, an opportunity for you guys to do what you obviously will do, which is to reward the kids for doing
Yeah.
these wonderful things, and you have the means to do it. We don't necessarily have the means to do it without taking it from some other area. At the end of the year, I could go and talk to Jeff and say, can we move money from this to this, because we didn't spend that, but we really try not to do that. So that's kind of the bind I'm in.
Well,
Have they gotten any money at all?
Yeah, I've given them about $1,000.
You
I've
have
committed to them already.
already?
That 1,200, about 1,000 comes from
I've
activities.
gotten 1,000 from activities already.
You need about 26.
So Jeff, that's, I know it's not a lot of money here, but I'm just asking, where does the money come from?
Probably come from the school board fund, right?
So, Mr. Chairman.
I can't believe we have
do I
much
need to
money.
stop carrying
What?
Someone thinks I have a bag of money here. Coming out of nowhere.
Good, I think you need a bigger bag then.
Question.
Okay, we're looking for $2,600. Where do we get $2,600?
I believe I looked into this, and I thought, and I looked at where you guys, where the board had spent last year, and to me it looked like you would be able to pull it from the school board expense line. And get that exact number.
School board expense line.
Yeah, we have a little.
Okay, what's left on that?
I think there was money last time we looked, it was.
2 or 3 mil?
Yeah.
So we had spent money for the consultant out of that line and given some other money.
I believe there was left.
Yeah, I mean,
So while they're looking that up, you can,
I have another request. This is not for money. It's another conference, though. The New Hampshire Athletics Directors Association, they have a student leadership conference. That's a request for 6 students and 2 adult chaperones to attend the student leadership conference in Brenton Woods, and that's on March 15th and March 16th. There is a cost. It's $125 per person, but that is budgeted through the athletic budget. The students would need to miss 2 days of school. We're asking for permission to attend and to excuse the students from school on March 15th and 16th.
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
okay, all those in favor?
Great, thank you very much. Angela's here, so thank you. I also have another, I'm asking you to waive a policy. So the Timber Rattlers Lacrosse Organization is requesting to distribute a lacrosse clinic flyer through students. Because the organization is not school, PTO, town, state, or federally sponsored, policy does not allow this to go home with students. This program serves as a feeder to the district's lacrosse program and receives recommendation from the Timberlane lacrosse coach. Distributing this flyer through students would require the waiving of school district policy KDCA, and I need you to waive that policy so they could send this home. We've done this in the past for other feeder, I think for field hockey, primarily
Make the
because.
motion.
Second.
Great, all in favor? Opposed?
Great, thank you. And back to Jeff with his 2636.
2636, you have a balance of approximately 10,344 after the missing expenditures for UN, Mr. Richmond's group.
Yeah, we spent some money there. So how much have we
Model
spent?
government or,
Model government.
Model government stuff.
how much did you say we have?
10,000.
So,
It's
10,000,
approximately 10,300.
so where is the money coming for? Don't we have 2 consultants floating around here for one strategic plan and one for
Transportation.
The
transportation?
strategic plan's been paid because that was
Did that come out of
months
there
ago.
already?
Yeah, that was paid.
So that's paid?
The transportation consultant, though, I don't know.
So I just want to see if you have any other.
Where did it come from? Did it come from the school board? Transportation
I would
consultant?
assume so. We were the one that,
Does it show that, Jeff? The transportation consultant?
His work's not done, so maybe he wasn't gonna bill us till we were done. He was done.
I'm just looking at your end of year expenses last year and the impact that would have on it.
$7,600.
Well, there is the time.
That's what he was, right?
No,
76?
I don't know. I'm just saying it would leave us 76,
Oh, yeah, but
64.
wasn't he like over,
it
wasn't
was
it?
we motioned up to
7,000?
7,500.
Yeah. Oh, yes, you get the math after you take the 20. I got you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We'd be at
Yeah.
76, 64.
Well, I mean, that's okay. I just want to make sure we can fund our commitment here with the consultant here. So I assume that even, we'll find an extra couple $100 someplace. And again, on the floor, whatever's in that budget, I don't get it. There should be plenty of money here. It's just,
Well, I think it went over 2 budget cycles, so it sounds like it should be corrected. It's corrected in the proposed budget.
We don't touch that in any theoretical sense when we're looking at how to get to a number.
yep.
So your current unencumbered balance is $10,223.84, $10,223.84. Your transportation consultant has been billed against that, and I would imagine we have, must be pretty close to being paid in full on that, showing approximately $4,000 in encumbrance, so his amount is undoubtedly encumbered as part of that as well. So your available balance is
Okay, good. All right.
10,223.
Great.
Very well.
All those in favor so you're looking for 26?
2636.
I don't think you have a
We didn't
motion.
make a motion yet.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
make it. I'll make a motion to
Second.
take 2636 from that fund.
Okay. Seconded by Peter.
I
All
just
in
have a quick
favor?
question,
Sorry.
sorry. So, forgive me, so if we give you that, will that deplete whatever you have left for the
No,
remaining year?
then I'll still have
Thousand?
$1,800.
Okay. I was ready to give you more of the school board money.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, hopefully it doesn't come up, but we'll see what comes up. But,
Yeah.
you know, I do expect, I have a couple of groups that are doing fundraising for things come up, we might be back with
Yeah.
another group or two.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Motion made second. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention.
I'm abstaining, my daughter's in the group, so.
Thank you very much.
Well, now that you've disclosed that, she was the,
Well, I can disclose it now because I didn't participate in the vote.
and she did a great job presenting the SLT with obviously the advisor, and so you would have been proud. So that's.
1 and 1.
Very happy to announce that we found an occupational therapist, so this, they're very, very difficult to find. We were able to find one that's Patricia Fowler, so that's in your packet, so I'd be looking for a motion to approve that hire.
Motion to approve.
Second?
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention.
Thank you. This is really good news. It's very difficult to find.
Super.
So that's all I have for administrator's report and personnel report.
I have a question for the superintendent.
You have a
Thank you,
question?
yeah. The tripod contract is being withheld from public disclosure. And we're hearing that it's under legal review, and I guess our lawyer lives in Antarctica because it's going to take him 3 months or 3 weeks to review the contract. So I find this a completely unacceptable state of affairs.
First of all, okay,
It's not personnel.
yeah,
I would like to know from the superintendent why it's going to take 3 weeks and why he thinks that the tripod contract is not subject to public disclosure.
okay. Well, before the superintendent, let me take a first shot at it, then you can clarify for me. This tripod contract is confidential, stamped all over it. This is available for viewing for school board members in a non-public type thing. It's, Attorney O'Shaughnessy has reached out to this company to see what is confidential about these matters, to see how fast this can be released for public review. Does that sound about right?
That's correct.
Well, how come as a school board member, I haven't been told I have an opportunity to look at this contract?
I
And I
just,
requested it a week ago.
okay, that was disclosed to me at about, I don't know, sometime today. So when if a school board member wants to review that contract, we can go down and make that happen. You can review the contract. It's not, it's a confidential document as far as we know right now. It's not the property of this district. That's the problem with why you can't, that was not Timberland that stamped confidential on it. That was that company that stamped it.
Which brings up, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, just to clarify, so we'd be able to set up an appointment to go down and view it, we wouldn't have to file a right-to-know request?
If you file a right-to-know request, it'll be treated as a right-to-know request. If you make
Well, I
a,
just-
if you make a request as a school board member, then that's different.
Right, well, I just wanna make sure that if I wanna come down and view it, I could view it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to take it out of the building,
No.
right?
No,
You can't
yeah.
photocopy it.
Yeah.
You can't write anything about it on
Yeah,
social
whatever.
media.
So
You
it's
can't-
just,
No,
so it's
no, I wouldn't
confidential
have any
information
need to
until we
do
know
that.
any different. That's all.
Okay, so from a governance point of view, this is a completely unacceptable state of affairs. Every other district that I know of writes their own contracts and
This is an
and
existing
has the
contract.
vendor sign the district's contract, and then the vendor can have the district sign their contract.
Donna?
But there is always 2 contracts in every district that I go online and look at. There's the vendor contract and there's the school district contract. For exactly this reason, this is an outrageous state of affairs that
I
the
know,
public
so-
cannot know. And for weeks, we couldn't
Wait a
know
minute, wait
what a
minute.
contract was.
First of all, the public cannot know today, tonight, until we find out what the deal is with this confidential statement. It's not the property of Timberlands. Once that is lifted, then anyone in the public can know. There's a bunch of sensitive information in this building that the public can't know.
Yeah, a lot.
So it's,
It is what it is.
and as far as This tripod contract was written 4 or 5 years ago. When was this written?
We've had several contracts with them over,
So-
in addition to the extension.
It didn't just occur, so I know there's been some concern about this subject matter. The people who serve on the school board obviously have rights, if you will, availability to review that type of confidential information in this building. The general public are just gonna have to wait, whatever it is, you know, whether it's, whether it takes a few days or a week, you know, because there's something on there that triggered that. So I was copied in a letter that went from Attorney O'Shaughnessy, I believe, to you, just asking for tripods release, basically.
Yeah.
So, they're trying to, I can't speak for, I don't know what is in that information, that, on that contract, that tripod is, I have no idea why they have it confidential.
We expect Tripod to hold our information confidential, and we hold their information confidential. You will be happy to know that on the phone today, I asked them, I said, well, listen, when you send out the questions but tell us we can't, I go, why can't we send them out? That's not helpful. I go, when you tell Bedford they can post something but you tell us not to, I go, that's not helpful. Well, and ours clearly tells us what we can and can't do and why, you know, so.
But do
I
they
know
have the same contract?
They're not the
Timberland
same.
Bedford?
They
All
must not.
Contracts are all different.
Yeah.
And I know she doesn't work for the district anymore. I know Deb Armfield asked those questions and was told, no, you can't do that, right? That's in the contract. So, we have a policy, obviously, about vendors holding our information confidential, and we hold theirs, non-disclosure agreements that we have. And so, I know people get concerned with legal fees, but, what legal fees you want to pay? You want to pay legal fees when Tripod sues us for releasing confidential information, or do we want to pay the legal fees to properly review, redact, and release what we can? I'm
Well-
going to tell you that the latter of those two comments is probably a lot less expensive than what it would cost.
Where I do share Mrs. Green's concern is, and I can't go back in time, something triggered that for them to put confidential on it. And I would think we would want to know that, so, you know, I don't know what that,
Well, it's something to look at going forward.
yeah, exactly. So it's something triggered that company to do that, and,
That's why we have the attorney looking at it.
no, I understand. I'm talking about for future contracts, that I can clearly understand. I'm glad we were able to do that whole special ed review without mentioning anything that was very positive, but.
I think you would find it wouldn't be unusual if we were able to negotiate a price that was far less than what other districts were paying, that they wouldn't want us releasing what we're paying, so that everybody gets that rate. That would be an example of something that they probably wouldn't be real comfortable with, you know, or if there are other terms in there. I mean, that's why we're having legal review it, to see. I had that question, it blew my mind when I saw the Bedford one, and all the questions are online. I'm like, what's the big deal with us posting the questions? I don't get it.
I don't think that they have all the questions online.
Oh, there's just some of them?
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe
there's
they
some of
agreed to
them.
some of the questions, I don't know.
Yeah.
I clicked on the 3
They
links.
didn't have the motivational mindsets on there. There was some,
Those are confidential, yeah.
Yeah,
Looked
well,
like they
those-
were the optional demographic stuff was.
Yeah, I know it wasn't the complete, but they let them
Right.
post some, they told us they couldn't post any of the questions, so.
that's in
It's
the
like-
So it's
contract.
gotta be their agreements.
Okay, anyway.
So, continuing on tripod, the middle school took the tripod survey. Was that with or without the so-called non-academic questions included?
The background questions, we don't believe there are any non-academic, there's background questions. You have a policy, ILD, which I've determined it to be an academic survey, and that's the way it's been.
So
Release.
my question is, was the middle school survey given in its complete form, or were some
I
questions
think that's a yes.
withheld?
I don't know, I'll have to see where they are in their administration of that. I don't have that information with me. Wasn't.
That is an insubordinate question
Oh,
again. That is a completely insubordinate question. The answer is yes or no. Was the survey
You wanna know what
given
I
in
had for
its
lunch
full
too, Donna?
form,
I
or
had-
wasn't
I had
it?
I had vegetable
Donna,
soup, it
enough.
was delicious.
That's a very poor use of the word insubordinate.
No,
So-
it's a completely accurate use.
We said it was a question, he didn't ask you a question.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it is for the state.
All right.
You good?
There's no other business in front of the board here
We should
tonight.
take care of some of these minutes, really.
Okay, go out for some minutes?
Ridiculous. how
Okay.
many minutes we have.
All right, so we can plow through some minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Well, I think, but you've got.
I
Second.
mean, we've got
I got no second, okay, don't worry about it.
No, you
We're not gonna do
holy
it,
cow.
Donna. I
Whoa,
lost.
We have 5 sets of minutes.
yeah.
Yeah, and one of them's non-public
Yeah,
minutes.
so they should-
They're not sealed, so yeah, we can just, right, they should be.
So
I
we
typically
we
don't
need,
release
the
them until.
non-public minutes should be done today, so they don't get lost.
I think we should get through some minutes here, just, okay.
Not lost, but, you
All
know,
right.
taken away or.
Okay, let's go, January 11th, that's the oldest? No, December 21st.
First.
Wow.
Motion to accept.
Okay, so I have a problem with these. This is the only one I have a problem with.
Which ones are they?
Nobody seconded it.
Second, I'll second, and then we can
Okay.
discuss.
Yeah,
Thank you, on page 2, it says, okay, Mrs. Sherman motion to fund 2,500 for the 218 STEAM camp program. Oh, and, right, and also, Mr. Guy motion to fund 6,000 for the Harvard Business. Nowhere in it does it say that, the school board is using their own funds to, for that. And I'd like the minutes to reflect that.
It doesn't have to.
Yes, it should, because,
But it was on the video, because we talked about it.
Did we
It's-
talk about where we're gonna take that money from?
yes, we did.
So it's on the
And-
video.
So, you
No,
know, I don't
the
know if
reason
true.
it's
But it wasn't
important.
in the motion, was it?
The
Okay, so
reason it is important is because that explains why I voted against it.
Okay.
Oh, that's what it is.
All right, well, if somebody asks you, you can tell them.
do you want to add where the money came from?
Yes, in both cases.
We can't go to the motion because that wasn't the motion.
No, in the discussion.
Yes.
You know, the minutes aren't a way to make us look individually good, bad, or indifferent.
Oh, well, it's just that they always happen to make me look bad, just by coincidence.
That's just
So-
what mirrors do.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, come on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There was just, I couldn't help myself.
Awful, Peter.
Yeah, right. So listen, all right, you want to add
You don't have them either.
Yes, that.
monies from the school board account?
Yes.
Fine.
Discussion ensued on the future school funding, on the future school funding of student activities, since this money was taken from the school board's own account.
All right,
I'll make a notation
Thank
that
you.
that's where the money was coming from.
great,
That's what I'm doing.
perfect.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the rest of them as a lump sum.
We have to take a vote on that?
Mrs. Sherman?
I said it looks as though Mrs. Sherman is funding it herself.
Hey, there you go, on my
December
retirement
21st,
salary.
add notation of funds.
Mrs. Sherman motioned to fund 2,500 for the STEAM camp program.
Okay,
You're welcome.
so,
Yeah.
motion, we have now made a motion to approve as amended December 21st meeting?
Okay.
Great. All in favor?
Oh, was that unanimous? Oh, it is now. One.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Okay,
2,
opposed?
3, 4, 5.
Fine, okay, done.
We do the rest of them as a lump?
Well, we can't do the non-public as
Right,
the
everything
one.
but the
Well, you
non-public?
can, because they're not sealed.
Oh, they weren't sealed.
Yeah, they're not
So
sealed.
there you go.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other comments about other,
So you have January 18th, two sets?
anyone have any other comments about other minutes?
11, 18, 25.
Yeah, we have 11, 18, 18 non-pub, and the 25th.
Go in order.
Do you want to do them individually?
No, I said
No, he made a motion to
Okay.
approve them all, I like it.
Yeah.
So if no one has any other comments about them, I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean,
You can do it by general consent if you want. No one has comments.
Were they seconded?
I'll second them.
Okay, so there's how many sets of minutes here then?
That would have been
Five.
1, 2, 3, 4 of them.
4 after the one we
Five.
just did.
Okay. Motion been made and seconded to approve all 4 sets of minutes and all those in favor? Unanimous. Great. That's motion tonight. Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn. You don't need one? Just one?
Adjourn at
See you later.
10:03.